All right, we might as well get started. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Hopefully everyone is in the right place. This is the review section. I guess it would be a bit weird if someone randomly ended up here. So I'll assume everyone is here. Today is like the first part of our final review session for the course. The way I'm gonna proceed with today's session is going to be different from the way I have proceeded in pretty much every lecture that we've done in this course. I think the way that I've tried to teach every other lecture has not been about teaching to the test. It's been about, at least in my good faith attempt, trying to teach to planet Earth and to teach to your careers. But I know we are getting close to the finish line and everyone needs to be practical and everyone wants to not feel too stressed and wants to feel well prepared for the exam. And at the end of the day, I do understand that grades matter. So hopefully today's session will help alleviate maybe some of the concerns, some of the ambiguities that you guys have, specifically with regards to the topic 1 part of the exam. On Thursday, I will cover the topic 2 part. And by the way, just to make sure we're all on the same page, Thursday's session will be in person. My COVID test came out negative, so we'll be able to do it in person. And by the way, I think it's better to do the topic 2 session in person because I need to use the board for that. If I were to use this thing for that, it probably wouldn't work out so fabulously. So I think, for topic 2, I was really hoping and praying that I'd be able to do it in person. So, thankfully, we're able to do that. So today's focus, again, just to repeat, is on topic 1. And again, I will be in this session really entirely focused on teaching to the test, right? So to make you guys, hopefully feel more comfortable with what you can expect and anticipate on the exam, and maybe just as importantly, what I will not throw at you on the exam, because there are things we did in class, things we did in the homework, where you probably are worried. You're like, oh my God, if this is put on the exam, there's no way I can do this in time. I realize that, and that's not my objective. So, again, like what I did in class, let's take, for example, working through the Amazon valuation example in all its glory. There is no way in the world that I could do that in any quantitative way on the exam. Now, what I can do is ask you guys some high level, big picture questions about the Amazon valuation. So not something where I'd be like, explain to me why this cell has this formula. I would never, ever do that. But something big picture, like saying, explaining the logic behind, a first pass valuation, followed up with refinements, and kind of using a sensitivity analysis on the first pass in order to gauge what refinements are most important. And the idea that things like a refinement on revenue is like pretty much always going to be necessary. And that for a company that's not stable and mature, a refinement on margins will probably be generally necessary as well. Those are things you should have gotten from the Amazon example, and that I don't think will make your head explode if you paid enough attention, if something along those lines is asked on the exam. And by the way, I'd ask it on the exam. For qualitative questions, I'll always ask kind of big ticket item questions like that, right? Like the big picture stuff that, let's be honest, you should remember, because if you don't remember that, you haven't been prepared for the real world, because those are kind of some of the most important things to be aware of when you start actually doing that stuff in planet Earth. But all that nitty gritty detail of, how you define a projection of margins based on, whether it's mean reverting or oscillating, or whether you see an oscillating pattern historically And in that case, maybe you go with a mean reverting projection versus like a clear trend, in which case maybe you extrapolate. And what's the formula for an extrapolation? I mean, I'm not going to test you guys on that because like, these are things that like, if you ended up doing that in the real world, you would have time to be able to figure it out, and I have confidence you'd be able to figure it out. But like, if you don't remember that like a key driver should always be revenue, I'm not sure giving you a bunch of extra time in the real world will help you there, because that's something you either know or you don't know. So, I'll try to give you guys, this is just one example so far. As we talk through things, I'll try to give you guys additional examples where I kind of go through, let's say, lecture notes or the practice final exam. We'll be doing that today. And I'll give you guys examples of what's fair game and what's not fair game. And my hope is that after you see a bunch of examples, you'll hopefully agree with me that I'm trying to be reasonable with the test. The test will be long, but it will be reasonable in the sense that I don't believe I will test you on things that are unfair. And I don't believe I will, that it's an exam that like leans super heavily on you needing to memorize second and third order stuff. So hopefully you guys will feel that I'm reasonable, and you'll have a sense that, the goal is not to surprise you with something that comes out of left field just to generate a grade distribution. That's not my objective. And also that you'll feel less scared because you'll kind of feel confident in your ability to kind of detect what's important and testable versus what's a detail that you actually you need to know in the real world, but that being able to execute that in the real world happens with the luxury of time, and in a timed exam that's not what we've got. So again, I don't want to give you guys the wrong impression. There probably will be a little bit of time pressure on the exam because I'll try to test a little bit of all the most important things in the course. There's actually a practical reason for me to do that, because if I just test a subset of the important things in the course, right? I'm just going to pick some random numbers here, but let's say there was 10 important things in the course, right? And imagine if I tested 5 of them. And it just so happens to be the case that the 5 things you're best at, you got unlucky. They're not on the test. That would suck for you, right? Meanwhile, someone else who knows 4 things got super lucky and all 4 of them on the exam. You can see that like the moment I start to test on a subset of the important stuff, I expose you to risk, right? I prefer not exposing you to risk, putting a little bit of everything, and then I let you decide what you work on first in the exam and what you work on next. And you should come into the exam with a little bit of a plan. And look, the solution, the optimization is relatively simple. You should know what you're best at. And the definition of best is what you think will get you the most points per minute. And do the stuff that you think you can get the most points per minute first. I guess if I was entering into the exam with a strategy, I'd have a sense of topic 1 quant, topic 2 quant, what am I better at? And I'd do the topic question that I'm better at first. And then, in terms of quant questions, and I think I've already explained this either in an email or in a course announcement, there's going to be 3 quant questions. There's going to be one, so challenging quant question for topic 1, one so challenging quant question for topic 2, and then there's going to be one question that's meant to be relatively easy that will either be on topic 1 or on topic 2, right? And so like on the basis of that, you should be able to know, like, if you're better at topic 1, do the topic 1 quant things first, then do the topic 2 things. Let's say that the exam has a topic 2 easy question. Well, then after doing the so-so topic 1 question, do the easy topic 2 question, and then do the so-so topic 2 question. And then make sure you leave, I don't know, you'll have a sense when you look at qualitative questions. Oh, I think I need 20 to 30 minutes for that. Then just budget 30 minutes at the end to just do your qualitative questions. So have a buzzer 30 minutes before the end. You stop working on the quant questions and you start doing the qualitative. I mean, look, this is the strategy I would use if I was in your shoes, but like, that's what's best for me. You'll have it, you better than I know you. But come in with a plan. Don't just come in like being like, whatever. So have a sense of what strategy is likely to work for you. By the way, another word of advice that I would give in terms of preparing for the exam is there's real value for you to come into the exam with pre-made templates. Now, these can either be the templates that I've given you in the course, if you're cool with using them, or it can be your own version of those templates that just come more naturally to you, right? So having those things ready to go will make you more productive on the exam, will increase your point per minute ratio, and will increase your total points, right? Not just that, there's a reason why I want to incentivize you to do this, because my hope is you use those templates outside of this course. And so this doesn't just make you more productive on the exam. In principle, my hope would be it makes you more productive post ACF, which at the end of the day, to be honest, that's what I care more about. But so in terms of like planning out the exam, those are some high level things that I would keep in the back of your mind as you're getting yourself ready for the test. Any questions so far? No? Okay, well, why don't we do the following? So again, I've already kind of explained the format. And by the way, the format is a little bit different than the practice final that you see online, because the practice final you see online has a topic 3 question. And as we agreed in class, there's no topic 3 question this year, right? And so I'm replacing the topic 3 question with an easy topic 1 or topic 2 question. By the way, I am writing up the exam questions tomorrow, so I haven't done it yet. But literally what I'm going to do to figure out the topic 1 versus topic 2, which topic is the easy question, I'm going to flip a coin. All right. So I don't know it yet, right? The coin flip will determine which topic gets done. Don't try to guess if I'm trying to signal to you which of the easy, which topic the easy question will cover, because I literally don't know it yet. Right. But yeah, so in terms of comparing what you see here and what I mean here, I mean what you see on the practice final that is posted on MyCourses. That's probably the most important difference, is that the last question on that exam, which was a topic 3 question, is replaced with a easier, quicker version of the topic 1 or the topic 2 question. Yes, Marie-Dominique.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering for the test, so is it gonna be like we're gonna have the instructions and then we submit like a document for the assignment, or do we have some spaces on MyCourses to write on?
No,
and then does that mean that, for example, if we have a topic 2, if I do the graph by hand, I have to take the picture and then upload it?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for asking that question, because that is certainly very important to know. So let me explain it. Basically, just before your exam, then this applies to everyone, obviously. Everyone will receive an email either from me or from my TAs. And the email is going to give you basic instructions. But I'll actually give you guys the instructions beforehand anyway, so that you don't need to read that part. And it will contain 2 documents, a PDF file and an Excel file, kind of like what you see on MyCourses, I think. The Excel file will only contain the data you need for your questions, and the PDF will have the questions. And And then what you guys do is you work on the exam, and you can use Excel. You can write things down pen and paper style. And if you write things down pen and paper style, you can take a picture of all the pages you use at the end of the exam. And then you submit all of that in an email. If you have so many pictures and somehow, your format for your pictures is that every picture is like 4 megabytes, then you may not be able to fit every picture in one email. Then you send multiple emails. You will send your solutions to the 3 TAs and to me. And we will organize all of that into student specific folders and grade it. So we will, try to like be somewhat considerate in terms of like trying to make it somewhat organized, because if there's absolutely no way for us to decipher what's happened, it really makes our job difficult. At the end of the day, we want to give people points. That's kind of our objective, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that will be the format. So it's not going to be something where it's like you take the exam within MyCourses. No, it's literally, I'm sending you a document and I'm sending you a spreadsheet. And I think in that sense, it makes it a little bit more like the workflow that you might have done for a homework, but just with like more reasonable questions within the context of a 3-hour time frame. Now, let me be clear, the exam is 3.5 hours. So 3 hours plus 30 minutes, with the clearly stated objective of that 30 minutes being to give you enough time after 3 hours to like collect all of that stuff that you did, take all those pictures, attach them, send them out via email, right? So the 30 minutes should be more than ample time for you to be able to get everything ready and send it. As a result, some of you will maybe spend 3 hours and 15 minutes working on the exam and trying to collect everything in 15 minutes. That's up to you. Just don't send it late.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Kits?
Sorry, just to clarify, so we have to, like, at the beginning of our 3-hour period, we'll get that email, and then we have to email you within 3.5 hours with all of our stuff, just to be clear. Okay.
Exactly. So yeah, don't test on. I mean, actually, probably what we'll have is a penalty system where, like, if it's late 1 minute, X number of points lost. If it's late, 5 minutes, like X plus Y points lost. Like, we'll have a system. That's the fair at the end. The objective there is to be fair to people. But whatever that penalty system is, I do commit. I will send you guys. The instructions are going to be written in the email that you guys get with the files. But I will actually send out to everyone, maybe like on Sunday or something like that, or, like at least the day before. I'll send you guys out the instructions so you can read them and just, not feel like the need to read it the day of, so that you'll know exactly what the instructions will be. But they're basically going to be they're going to be what I just said. Make sense? Okay, Abigail?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so at what time is that email getting sent out?
Like, when does the exam start? At 2 p.m. on this?
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a specific time slot for our exam.
There is. There is.
Okay,
So you should definitely go check out what it is. Well, I can actually look because I did put it in my calendar. Wait, what day is it at? It's on the 7th, is it? Wait, is it on the 7th? Oh, I thought it was in my calendar, but it doesn't.
It's on the 7th, yeah, 7th at 2 p.m.
ACF exam for BCom starts at 2 p.m. So Tuesday, December 7th, 2 to 5:30 p.m. And you'll receive the email. I mean, whatever, I'll probably send it like 1 to 2 minutes early. 1 minute if I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, 2 minutes if I woke up on the right side. That's my attempt at a joke. So, that's why I should not quit my day job. As we all know, I've said this many times. Yes, Dara.
Yes, hi, Professor. I wanted to ask, how do you suggest we study for the exam? Because we've covered a lot of stuff. So are we going to go over the most important stuff in these review sessions?
Yes, exactly. So look, I think the single most useful thing is to familiarize yourself with the practice final and to listen through the guidance I give in today's session. So the good news is we have this session recorded so that if you need to review some of it, you can review what I say today, and hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And let me be clear, like, practicing your solutions to the homework 1 is not an effective practice for the final, because those questions are way more elaborate than anything I could reasonably give you on the final. Now, meanwhile, it's different with problem set 2. With problem set 2, those questions are helpful to prepare you for the final exam, right? So that's why, I initially made the homework due the night before the final, because I'm like, look, folks who want to finish it in time, they will get an exam taking benefit from having done that, right? But, I don't want to micromanage, and I understand that different people, different teams have different sets of obligations at the end of the semester. And some of you may feel like you're really stretched thin. And that's why I also provided the option to submit after the exam, with a 1-week extension, right? So anyway, I hope that helps, and I hope those decisions feel reasonable. Yes, Andrew.
Hi, Professor. Then would you say it's more effective of our time to focus on homework 2 rather than review homework 1?
Yeah, like literally, it's like comparing a large positive number to 0. Like, just don't review homework. Like, I'm telling you straight up, don't review homework 1 for the review, like what the practice, the homework 1, sorry, the topic 1 problems in the practice final, and whatever I say tonight on this topic. Now, hopefully you don't start to ask yourself why in the world was homework 1 the way it was, because the answer to that is actually rather straightforward. Homework 1 is about preparing you for planet Earth, right? Not Planet McGill exam. And those two things aren't the same, because this is a 3-hour exam.
Right. Thank you so much.
I think down the road, homework 1 is more valuable for you in your career than the topic 1 question on this exam. But the topic 1 question on this exam is meant to give me a sense of, do you understand enough of the basics so that I feel good with, giving you a good grade or giving you a passing grade, yada, yada, yada. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, if we don't have other questions, why don't we do the following? Let's actually start formally solving through the topic 1 quant question, right? There's, I think, a couple of versions of them. So we'll solve through more than one question. And then after doing that, then what we'll do is we'll spend the rest of the session going over the topic 1 slides, so that I can kind of give you guys examples of qualitative questions that I could ask, and highlighting what I think is testable on the qualitative front versus not testable. Does that seem like a good way to go? All right. So anyway, it's tough to aggregate knowledge when all I see is kits and then a bunch of like black thumbnails with people's names written. I do see a thumbs up from Dara. I guess that is information. But I shall just assume that it's okay, because no one is screaming and crying right now. Although you could be on mute, in which case screaming and crying doesn't really reach me, unless you really do it loud. Okay, so let me go ahead and share screen. 1 second here. My computer is doing some weird stuff right now. But let me find Adobe Acrobat. Allow Zoom to share your screen. Oh, open system. Sorry, folks, I got a new computer. Apparently, I need to permission some stuff. How do I do it? Privacy. Come on. Uh-oh. Oh, click to lock and lock, makes changes. Oh, I need to now put my thumb here. There we go. Quit and reopen. I don't like that. Let's see. Aha, victory. Can folks see my my share screen, my PDF? All right, thank you, Kits. Look, exam is going to be a total of 100 points. I'll give you guys, I'll literally in my email that I give you guys ahead of the exam, I will give you the exact script. You know, it says in the real exam, some basic instructions will be found. Like whatever is written here before the good luck all, I'm going to give you guys exactly what's written there, at least the day before the exam, A. And B, I will actually give you guys the breakdowns of like how much points each question are. So like problem 1, 15, like I'm not going to tell you it's like part A is 5 points, part B is, but I'll tell you problem 1 will be qualitative and 15 points. I will tell you, you know, problem 2 will be like the topic 1 so-so quant question, and it'll be 25 points. Problem 2 will be the topic 2 so-so quant question, and will be 25 points. And like problem 3 will be the easy version of a topic 1 or topic 2. I won't reveal which one it is, and it'll be worth this many points. See what I'm saying? So like, at least you'll have a sense of what the distribution of grades across the 4 questions of the exam are. Folks okay with that? Yes? All right. So, so I think, at least it kind of, I'll give you guys a sense of how everything is going to be broken down there. So what we're going to start with first in this practice final is we're going to start with like basically, we're going to start and mostly finish with so-so. When I say so-so, what I mean is the more difficult version of a topic 1 question, to contrast it from that question that I've added vis-a-vis last year's exam and the practice final, right? Which is like, now there's going to be an easy version of, again, either topic 1 or topic 2. So I'll just focus on the tougher one. And I just think it's better to do 2 versions of that than it is to kind of make up an easy question on the fly. Just know, like the easy question, it'll be legitimately easier than the whatever so-so. And I'm calling it so-so because my goal is not to like destroy you with any of these questions. Okay. So folks, okay with me doing it that way? Yeah. Okay. Again, I shall just assume that folks are cool with it. Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a look at this. And again, I'll try to give you guys some commentary along the way so that you can kind of know more generally what one could expect. So let's take a look at this. By the way, topic 1, you pretty much know. It's going to be, it's going to be a quant question where you need to do evaluation. So you're at the end of the day, you're doing DCF. It may be a pure DCF where you get a terminal value with a terminal discount rate, or it could be a hybrid method where you get a terminal value using a terminal multiple, right? So it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to do stuff like that. The other thing that is guaranteed to happen in this problem is that you will have a sensitivity analysis style question. In other words, you will either do sensitivity analysis, 2-way sensitivity analysis using data table, right, in Excel, or you will do a trigger point analysis using solver in Excel. In other words, as you solve this problem, the best practice is to set your valuation model in Excel template style, where you pay attention to which variable or variables are going to be used in your sensitivity analysis. And you make sure you put them outside of your table in Excel so that it's really easy to do a sensitivity analysis with that. Does that make sense to folks? Or maybe if it doesn't, maybe it'll make more sense after we do it. But so that actually means that actually maybe even before you start reading this question, it's useful to find the part of the question where you're asked the sensitivity or trigger point analysis question, and to identify which variables get tinkered with, just so that you know as you're setting your model. It just will help you set a better template. Are we okay with this so far? So I'll literally show you. I see this question. I don't even start reading. I flip down. Ba 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 ba. Oh, you know what? I'll even commit to be nice. I will put the sensitivity analysis question in red and literally call it the sensitivity analysis question. So you even don't need to read. You just need to use your, well, hopefully you're not colorblind. And if you're colorblind, hopefully you can see square brackets, sensitivity analysis question in bold. But in any case, and by the way, when I say sensitivity analysis question, it could be trigger point. So you need to be able to read this and figure out if it's sensitivity or trigger point. Look, there's actually a simple rule of thumb here. If I'm playing around with two variables, most likely it's a two-way sensitivity analysis using data table. And if I'm playing around with one variable, it probably means it's a trigger point analysis where you'll use solver. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. It says, given the assumptions listed above, how much of the firm would Infinity have to sell at year 0 to raise 1.5 billion in cash needed to finance the Pixtogram purchase? In answering this question, keep in mind that the purchasers of new securities would own both Infinity and Pixtogram post-transaction. Do the following sensitivity analysis. Determine how your answer to this question changes if you adjust the growth rate plus minus 5%, increments of 5%, and meaning you're just going to entertain 3 options. The baseline from this initial setup, 1 below. When I say 1 below, I mean 5% below, and 1 above, i.e. 5% above. And you adjust the WACC by plus minus 2% increments of 1%. In other words, there's 5 rungs there, right? The center, which is the baseline, and then minus 1% of that, minus 2% of that, plus 1% of that, plus 2% of that. So this is actually clearly a two-way sensitivity analysis. This is actually going to, just a preview, this is going to be the toughest part of the question. And I'll explain why it's the toughest part of the question as we solve it rather than previewing, because you guys aren't even ready with the basics of the question yet. But there's something that makes this at the margin a little bit tougher. And I'll highlight that as we solve it. But notice it's a tough question. If you totally tank this thing, it's not going to kill you. The question is worth 4 points. Right? So I will have challenge bits in the exam, but I kind of make sure that the parts where I'm like, this is pushing the envelope a little bit, it will not total more than 10 points on the exam, which I think is fair, right? Sound good? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if it sounds good or not. I'm committed to that one. At the end of the day, you want to have something in the exam where the superstars can shine. I think that's the right thing to do. While making almost all of the exams something where people show their competence. Seems like 90-10 is a sensible way to go about doing. So are folks okay with me starting to read through this and commenting along the way?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. The one person that put a thumbs up. I'm not exactly sure who you are, but I appreciate it. Hopefully you don't take that the wrong way. All right, so let's go ahead and start reading this. You work for a technology company called Infinity. This company was recently outbid in its attempt to acquire Pixtagram, a private firm and developer of a popular social networking application. During the bidding for Pixtagram, Infinity determined its highest bid for the firm using an average price to user ratio from comparable companies. In particular, Infinity used data on the comparables listed in the table below: Foursquare, Hipstamatic, Instagram, and then we've got Pixtagram. Social category, location sharing, photo sharing, photo sharing, photo sharing, valuation. Anyway, I don't think I need to read through all of those numbers, right? But we've got data on the valuation of 3 companies, their most recent operating revenue, the number of users they have, the user growth over the last year. And then we have the analogous data with the exception of a valuation for Pixtagram. Any questions with this so far? No? So let's continue reading. But as you can probably tell, I'm going to ask you to do, as a first question, a current comparables-based valuation, because I've given you the information you need to do something there, correct? So assume that each firm has no debt and that the valuation column means the value of the entire firm. To be clear, OpRev means operating revenues. Question A, why would using a price to earnings ratio not make sense for multiples valuation in this case? Provide a motivation for using the price to user ratio for the multiples valuation here. What are legitimate concerns with some of the comparables listed above? Anyone want to try to chime in on this a little bit before I start to comment? So why would you, by the way, I mean, in some sense, I don't fully give you, wait, do I? Let's see. I mean, in some sense, to answer the price to earnings ratio part of this, you need to make actually some assumptions, because I haven't given you the earnings numbers. But if you were to guess here, what would be the reason that it wouldn't make sense to use price to earnings ratio for these companies? By the way, on the actual exam, I probably would hint towards the right answer in my writing of the problem. So I would actually write a little bit more detail here. But what would you guess would be the reason for, well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I've given you enough information. It's because I didn't look at the numbers. I mean, it's pretty obvious from here what the problem with, yeah, I don't need to give you any more detail. I've given you everything you need here. Okay, I saw some hands up, but now they disappeared. Abdullah.
Yeah, you don't even have any revenue, so you don't have earnings to actually do the PE ratio at all. So
Exactly. So that's why, like, the one thing I know about earnings is it's less than or equal to revenue, right? In other words, it's at most 0, but actually it's almost surely negative. And we do know you do not do a comps-based valuation with negative attributes. So that's something everyone should know. That is like basic knowledge in doing real world finance. So you can totally establish, given the data that I've given, that earnings are negative at a very minimum for Foursquare, Instagram, and Pixtagram. And so we know this ain't gonna roll because the company we're trying to value has negative earnings. So we can't use earnings to value that company by definition. So that part, relatively straightforward. Provide a motivation for using the price to user ratio for the multiples valuation. Okay, so someone want to answer that part for me? Yes, Dara, go ahead.
I think because for something like social media companies, you would need, like, the higher the number of users, the more money you can generate.
Yeah, exactly, right. And, like, in some sense, this is kind of like value per user, right? Value per user should be driven by what? It should be driven by the profits that a user are going to generate going forward. And these are recurring revenue customers. So we expect them to be generating, eventually the hope is that they start generating goodies, right? So we might not be monetizing right now, but down the road, we expect to monetize. And once we start monetizing, right, that's going to generate value at the user level, right? And so if we think all of these companies have a similar growth trajectory and a similar future ability to monetize users, then they should have similar price to user ratios. By the way, what I just gave as an answer is more elaborate than what I would require from you on the exam, right? But that's kind of going to the heart of the answer. Yes, Kits, you have a question?
Sorry, but kind of just what you just said. So we would need those assumptions written down, or no? Like, would we have to, like, we assume that they'll monetize eventually, and we assume they have a similar
answer there? Like, in some sense, a perfect answer would talk about, would mention the fact that users are a source of future recurring revenue, would say, two companies that have a similar ability to monetize a user in the future and have a similar growth rate of the user base going forward should have a similar multiple. Now, those, you can say that there's three things in this question. Mentioning that users generate revenue in the future, I would expect everyone to mention that. What I would not be surprised is if someone didn't mention the user growth wrinkle in this answer. So, in other words, the first part, recurring revenue, users are a source of money in the future. I would that would need to be part of the answer, right? But out of those two next things, ability to monetize those users in the future and user acquisition in the future, if you mention just one out of those two things, that combined with that first statement would be good enough for your points.
Okay.
Does this clarify to folks?
Yeah.
By the way, let me also be clear here, like, oftentimes this is how I will judge qualitative questions in the quantitative questions like this. Is there's going to be a perfect answer. It may have 4 parts to it, but you need to mention 2 out of 4. Right, there might be one that you absolutely must mention, but there's going to be a part where it's like a perfect answer, you'd mention 2 things, but if you mention one of them, I'm happy with it because I know you're looking at the right place and you kind of get it. But I don't want this to be something where you guys start to treat absolutely everything like a memorization exercise. I just think that that's not worth much to you. And so because of that, I don't treat these things as pure checklists. I give you guys a little bit of leeway to miss a part on a multi-part answer for the qualitative questions in the quantitative part. Does that make sense? Does that clarify a bit? Hopefully it makes you feel a little bit less pressure. Thank you again for the thumbs up. Yes, Andrew.
I had a question about the user retention aspect. How does that tie with the price per user ratio?
Yeah, no, you're right. The thing is by the way, someone mentions that at the end of the day, I know you kind of know where you should be looking. I mean, I would call that as part of the ability to generate revenue from users in the future. So one could actually unpack ability to monetize user in the future into how much you charge and how much you retain. Like I would put, like what you're mentioning is like a deeper wrinkle in that first thing. So like if you do that, like I'm even happier, right? But like at some point, it doesn't mean I'm going to give you more than 100% of your points. I mean, that's not how it works, but like, you're absolutely right that you could mention that, but like, I don't feel like I wouldn't require it. If you just kind of made more of the generic statement, ability to monetize the users you've got in the future, because that encompasses the notion of retention, I would be kind of cool with the more like generic answer. But if someone puts that, like, I know they get it even more.
Okay, thank you.
For what it's worth, right? Is this helpful so far? All right. What are legitimate concerns with the comparables listed above? So anyone want to mention one? Yes, Hugo.
The user growth from the last year, they're all pretty different.
Yeah. So someone could emphasize user growth over the last year, right? Not all of them are that close to pictogram, right? So by the way, this is kind of like shooting. It's like trying to catch fish during like fish mating season with a bucket is not meant to be difficult, because you're right, Hugo. That's correct. I mean, so many hands up, right? David, let's go with you.
Okay, I was saying the valuation, the size of the company relatively to each other. I mean,
So which is the one that kind of seems a little bit odd?
oh well, I think Hipsmatic or something like that. Anyways, yeah, that one, it's like really small with respect to the other ones.
Exactly. So like, it's an outlier on, so Hipstamatic seems weird, both from a valuation and from a revenue standpoint, because they're already monetizing. And they have way fewer users. So there's a lot of reasons to think, don't use Hipstamatic. We agree with that so far, right? And there's also a lot of reasons for saying like, don't include Foursquare, right? It's location sharing, which seems like fundamentally different from photo sharing, and it has a materially lower growth rate, right? So like in some sense, there's really only one comparable that looks, somewhat well suited, correct? Maybe not surprising given the names, right? Instagram and Pixtagram, right? So Instagram seems like the most suitable comparable to use here. Would we agree in light of the data? Right. So, and look, notice like the whole question, part A, is worth 4 points. So I am not expecting you to say everything that I just said in your answer. That would be nuts. So you just need to say enough, right? It says it doesn't say what are all the legitimate concerns. It just says what are, maybe a better version of this question that would be more clear is point out the flaws with one comparable above. And then you would either tell me why Foursquare sucks as a comp or why Hipstamatic sucks as a comp. And once you've made it, you don't need to list everything. Once you've made the case of why it sucks, you can stop. You don't need to continue to pour salt on the wound of the comparable. Yes, Musa.
Yeah, there's one issue, like the number of users for each company are like, I don't know for how many years they have been acquiring those users. So like the age of the company doesn't affect.
Yeah, it does, but I'm not going to give you every bit of data in the world, right? Then I would give you a 100 column spreadsheet and you pissed for a different.
So should I mention like we are assuming all have the same relative age compared to acquiring their customers?
I mean, literally just don't assume anything about what you don't see. And it probably doesn't need to be, making assumptions there doesn't need to be part of like it's not part of the intended answer. Like the data that will be provided will be enough for you to answer. In other words, like you don't need to go there to be able to answer part A. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Folks okay with part A? Again, to me, this is a representative question, qualitative question within the quantitative question. And look, then I say using all the comparables from the table above, determine infinity's highest bid for pixtogram. So like, I'm not even asking you to take a stand on what's a good comp versus not. I just tell you, use them all. So in other words, even if you're clueless in part A, you're not screwed in part B. Sorry, I'm just opening up an Excel file here. Because I'm going to start solving this. Yes, David. Do you have a question, David?
Yeah, you hear me now?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is this question made to be simple? Because like I'm looking at it and it's like with respect to like our homeworks and stuff, like this is like very much, I guess, compact to what we did.
Yeah. Welcome to the final exam. I mean,
Like it's like almost like I don't know. It's like a big step down. That's all.
yeah, it's a big step down. I mean, did you find that homework 1 took you time?
Incredibly.
Yeah. And if I did that on the exam, would you think I'm
Oh no. I mean, I would expect that. I mean, no one would finish. I mean, like zero chance.
a complete jackass? If I put that, if I put problem 3 of homework 1 as part A of the comparables question on the exam, I would be a jerk. Right?
I just like to see everyone's face. I think that's like
yeah, well, you know, it's going to get a little tougher along the way. You know,
Yeah.
I try to start with like slower pitches at the beginning.
okay.
Right. So like, this is not the peak of complexity in this problem. Right?
No.
But like, I want to put some stuff that shows me like you get the bare minimum. Right. I want to
That's
give you know, like, look, there's some people that I don't believe I've ever met who are in this class as far as I'm concerned. You know, I don't know if they're going to start studying for the course on Friday, or if they've like, I just don't know. Right. I mean, you know, I want to give them a chance to pass. Right. Even though maybe one should not, I mean, but you know, I don't know. I just don't know. Right. Like if I've never heard from you or seen you, you know, maybe you're on the ball and you've watched the videos, maybe not. One of the things with the videos, it makes that all of that a little bit more forgiving. Doesn't strike me as a bad thing. I certainly don't take it personal if folks didn't show up. I mean, again, like, do what is best for you. You know yourself better than I do. Okay, sorry, I need to kind of move towards sharing my my Excel spreadsheet. So I am going to start with a blank spreadsheet here. And I'm sorry that I need to do this, but I will start populating this with the data. By the way, I will do a better job than this on the final exam, because on the final exam, in the spreadsheet that I give you, I will give you all of the tables in this problem. I will give them to you in Excel form as well, so that you can just kind of copy paste that table or build your template off of that table. I just didn't do it here. Folks okay with that? Yeah. So now I just need to basically jot down Foursquare, Hipstamatic, okay, I'll just put in the data that I actually need for the exercise. So we decided to go valuation, and valuation means value of the firm. And then we're going to go users. Those are the only things that we're going to use. So we have 500, 80, 1 billion, 20. Oh, shoot. And yes, David, you are correct. Like this is meant to be, this is actually explicitly meant to be easy, like completely deliberate.
Okay, sounds good.
But again, like overall, I mean, in comparison to the homework, this will all be easier because again, time constraint, an attempt at being semi-reasonable.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, the goal of the homework was never to prepare you for the test. It was to prepare you for planet Earth. So everyone sees what I'm doing. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys are taking a strategic siesta right now. Yes, Alice.
Yeah, I'm just wondering like why you chose to use the average of the PE ratios. Like should we be expected to just go the simple route and do that on the exam, or should we like match what we do here with part A and do like a weighted average or something?
Yeah, look, Alice, that's a fair point. In the real world, you know, especially in a case where like not all comparables are created equal here, as we just highlighted, right? Yeah, we might go about it a different way. For the purposes of the exam, note to everyone, just do the average. Now, I could ask a qualitative question, right? Where I would say, in some circumstances, you want to deviate from the average. If you were to make a judgment call on doing that here, what would you put the most weight on and why? So I could ask that question. Now, let me also explain, like, if you decided to just kind of like change the weighting and then defend it in your solution. So you're like, I'm going to go 50% IG, 25% HIP, 25% Foursquare, because I think IG is the most comparable. Like, I'll give you your points.
Yeah, but there's like no extra points or anything like that for that.
No, there is not.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
So you know, like I don't see a version of the world where it's in your interest to do that. So I would just go with like blanket average, and I may put a qualitative question that asks you a little bit what you were quantitatively hinting at, so that you could get points from answering that well. Make sense?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
No problem. Did you re-raise your hand, or is it still up from before kind of thing? Okay, there we go. That's the answer to that. Let's see. Determine the highest bid for Pixtagram. Well, we just did, right? 1.204, 0.44444, going on for a long time. I don't remember if I said 1,204 or 1.204. Anyway, whatever. 1.2 roughly $billion. Folks, okay with this? Again, you know, my hope would be that pretty much everyone would get their full 3 points here. Yes, Dara. Do you have a question, Dara? I can't hear you, but I do see a hand up.
Is it better now? Sorry.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry for this question. Is there a need to use your template at all? Is there a point to even looking at your templates?
Yeah, this one here, not really. And in fact, like what would be helpful is when I, you know, that spreadsheet that I give you, right? It would be helpful to just not type the data yourself and to just use the sheet that I gave you and to just add this column to the sheet I gave you, right? Then average it here, then basically multiply these two numbers together to get that, right? So here, the time-saving tip would be use the data in spreadsheet form that I sent you, right? Yeah, so I would say like having a master, you know, guru template on the comp here is not that helpful. And by the way, look, there's value to knowing situationally, like this is one where I'll use the template that I've got. Oh, this one is so fast and easy. I won't go and like jam fit the data that I see here into like my broader template. I'll just roll with like simple calculations off of the data that I have in spreadsheet form. Like being able to know which of those two avenues is the right way to go is a useful thing to know. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So,
Yes.
so yeah, you're absolutely right. That here, like the template just literally might slow you down. So don't do that. But in other places, it might not. Folks, okay with this? All right, let's keep on reading. It says the winning bid placed by a company called FaceCloud was for 1.5 billion in cash, and you are curious about what Infinity could have done to match this offer. In particular, your company was also planning to make an all-cash offer, but was going to finance this bid by raising new debt and equity in a way to keep its leverage ratio fixed. Now, let me be clear what that means. By keeping your leverage ratio fixed, you keep your WACC the same, right? So that's the reason why I say that nerdy thing. In essence, you could think of this as selling a fixed proportion of the entire firm to finance the bid. You want to determine how much of the firm you would have needed to be sold to match FaceCloud's offer. To determine this, follow the steps outlined below. Now, before we actually read the steps below, it's useful to know where in the world I'm going here. The rest of the question is not about valuing Pixtagram, because we've already been told you buy Pixtagram for 1.5 billion. So the rest of the exercise is actually about what? It's about valuing your company, right? So it's about valuing Infinity. And so we're going to do some sort of DCF style valuation there. All right, I see that there may have been a question. Sorry, Prof, you did not switch. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. Are folks okay actually with me not necessarily always switching back to the final problems, just because kind of may get a little bit annoying. So, but maybe my recommendation is, everyone has their Zoom open, just have like the question, the final exam question open, in a separate window. I think that's doable. I will switch when I get to important parts, but yeah, I mean, this one I should have switched, but it's kind of over and I'll switch now. Yeah. If I don't do that, just speak up and remind me instead of, if you like, I'm just on my laptop right now. So if I forget to do that switch, just someone tell me, because the chat thing, I don't see it unless I push the button, and then I have like 40 windows open. So like that doesn't work well with one laptop. Let me find here. So we're back here. So now we start to read the steps below, but this was just laying the land for like setting up the real valuation that we're going to do, which is going to be, as I said, a valuation of the company called Infinity. As a first step, you must value the firm before the acquisition. To do so, you will use a hybrid valuation method with the unlevered PE ratio as your multiple. In particular, you will value Infinity's early stage cash flows using DCF with WACC, and will obtain Infinity's terminal value using a multiples analysis. To aid in this calculation, you have gathered the data on current and future comparables in the table below. So we have Google, Microsoft, and Megasoft, and then we've got Infinity. And okay, what were we saying? Yeah, hybrid valuation. So that means we get our terminal value using a terminal multiple, and then we get the early stage cash flows, the way we get early stage cash flows. I'm realizing I'm actually starting to lose my voice. So hopefully this continues to go okay. If not, I may have to microwave this tea because it's now gotten very cold. Anywho, so we have this. Okay, so let's actually ask ourselves, which companies, what companies will we use to get our WACC, and what companies will we use to get our our terminal, well, what will we use to get our early WACC, and what will we use to get, oh, well, we don't need to get a stable WACC because we're going to get a terminal multiple. So what data are we going to use to get a terminal multiple here? Right, we've got 3 companies. We won't use all 3 for both things. So someone want to help me here? Yes, yeah.
Are we planning to be stable in the long run? So probably we should use the stable ones.
Yeah, so we're going to use the stable ones to get what specifically?
The terminal.
The terminal multiple, correct? Right. And if we wanted to get a terminal discount rate, we would use those stable companies to get the terminal discount rate. Do we agree with that so far? I'll assume again that that was a yes. It is tough to, it's even tougher to read this than live. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to use Microsoft and Megasoft to get our terminal multiple. We could also use it to get, as I said, a terminal discount rate, right? Where that would be the discount rate, the stable discount rate that we use in getting a terminal value using a perpetuity formula. Again, that won't be what we're doing here because we're explicitly told that we're doing a hybrid valuation using unlevered PE ratio as our multiple, right? What are we going to use to get our early or whatever, like our WACC over the first few years? Which company are we going to use? Google, exactly. Thank you, Hugo. Yeah, right. Because right now, Infinity is in the early growth phase, but they will stabilize in the future. Now, the multiple that we're going to be using for valuation purposes is a PE ratio. And I actually help you guys out, and I'll do this on the exam. I don't feel like forcing you guys to like remember accounting definitions. We can Google that shit anyway. You're not allowed. Are you allowed to Google it? Sure, you're allowed to. You're allowed to use, the only thing you're not allowed to do is use another human during the exam. Either, that includes humans in the class and humans outside of the class. But if you want to Google stuff during the exam, you're allowed. You are allowed to have whatever notes you want. You're allowed to have the lecture notes for the class open. You can watch the YouTube if you want. It's all available to you, okay? The only thing that's not available is another human. Don't test that one. In any case. Are we okay with this so far? So let's go ahead and get, okay, but yeah, so I said earnings, I give it to you. Literally, I'm telling you that earnings are given by 1 minus tax times EBITDA minus depreciation minus interest, right? That's after tax earnings. And that's what we're going to use to get the PE ratio. And so in other words, our PE ratio is going to be what? It's going, if we have our target PE ratio, we'll take that number and then we'll compute that formula that I had. Can folks see the little hand here shaking around, right?
Yes, Professor.
Like that number for our company for Infinity at the terminal date, and then multiply that by the multiple. And we'll talk about getting the multiple in a second. Okay, Camilla says, besides the growth phase, would you also look into the debt beta if we have multiple options? Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Oh, sorry, I meant like when you want to calculate, when you want to see which company you use to calculate the WACC, if we have too many options in the early stage, would you also look into debt beta or not?
I mean, at the end of the day, for the quantitative calculations, I won't ask you guys to get really fancy and judgmental in like deciding what to include and what not to include. So literally for the purposes of the exam, right, you will end up using all the companies in the table. It's just that you'll have to decide, are these companies relevant for the terminal or relevant for the early? You see what I'm saying? And it won't be something where you start looking more deeply to decide, well, which of the early ones should I include? Which of the early ones do I not include? You don't need to do that in the quantitative question, just because like that starts to open the door for like a rabbit hole that will be a big time suck for some people, which then would create bigger problems in terms of the totality of the exam. So, you know, with a table like this, you'll end up using some of the companies for the discount rate, the early discount rate, and you'll use some of the companies for the terminal multiple, but you'll end up using every company exactly once, either in one or the other. See what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. And what, again, just, I mean, it's the same thing to some of the things we discussed with part A, which is I reserve the right to ask a qualitative question that starts to get you to start thinking about what you just said. Right? So like, let's say there was Google early and there was Google 2.0 early, and they were materially different in some way. And one of, you know, either Google 1.0 or Google 2.0 was clearly more similar to Infinity, then I might ask a question like, if you were to only pick one of the Googles to help valuing Infinity, which one would you pick and why? And you would have to provide a verbal explanation for it. Make sense? Okay, I'll assume that that makes sense. By the way, like even in the example, say something like problem 2 V1 data tab, you know, might be useful. That just means like you might want to just like use those numbers, create an extra column, V over U, so that you can do your. I mean that was what we did in part A. You know, we could do an analog of that here. So why don't I? Okay, so actually, I mean, given what we just read, even though I'm not asking you to do that yet, we might as well go and calculate those two things, right? What are the two things? A WACC for Infinity for valuing the early stage cash flows, and a terminal multiple for Infinity. Folks okay with me doing that? Again, it's a guarantee that you would be asked to use this. I'm just kind of solving it but like, if you're worried, if you're saying to yourself right now, like, oh my God, you know, Professor Kondo's solving things before they're even asked, I don't think I can do that. Like, chill. It's not necessary for you to be able to do it because you'll end up having to do it later. I just think it's like a good time for me to do it now anyway, because I think you guys all understand now that I've said it, that like, you know, these are calculations you're able to do at this stage. Do we agree with that? All right. Again, I shall assume that you agree, because anyone who disagrees should be voicing their opinion. It doesn't signal anything negative about you, so you shouldn't be afraid of that. But, you know, without you voicing, how the hell am I supposed to know? Now, I actually am going to read a little bit ahead because to get the discount rate, we know what other information do we need to know? Someone want to help me with this? No one wants to help me? Okay. Well, remember we use the cap. Thank you, Abdullah.
Need the tax rate, right? For the after tax cost. That. Yeah.
By the way, I see here the tax rate 35%, right? What else do I need?
Need the equity ratio.
Yes, that's provided to us by making
and I need the equity return and the debt return.
Yeah, which you know, just as a rule of thumb, you know, we can, you know, oftentimes just get those from the CAPM, right? So certainly for cost of equity, we'll get them using the getting the cost of equity. But given the fact that I give you a debt beta in this problem, that signals to you that you'll also use the CAPM to get the cost of debt. Are we on the same page here? Again, I shall assume that we are all on the same page. So I need to know what riskless rate and market premium. So I'm just looking here, yada, yada, yada. Riskless rate, 4%, market premium, 6%. So go ahead.
Yeah, Giro, sorry to interrupt. So like the data you provided before part C, they are to answer part C, right?
They are literally the data before part C and part D and E. Well, part C and D are going to be the information we need to answer all of C and all of D.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So, all right, so let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, so literally, there's some stuff I haven't read yet that we're going to be using for answering part D a little bit later. So I'm going to now switch. Are folks okay with me switching to back to the spreadsheet? So I'm going to have to just manually enter some of this stuff. Again, apologies. Again, on the exam, you will not need to do this because I will give you let's see. Let's first do the things necessary to get our WACC. So for our WACC, we need to know D, E, so I'm just kind of looking at some of this because I'm trying to figure out where I gave the information necessary to get the, where's the, oh, yeah, there's some data in here for calculating the beta of equity for Google, right? So that comes from the data sheet. So let me actually share the data sheet. Apologies for that. Do folks see the new spreadsheet here?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So literally, this is a sheet that will be included with the exam, right? Where I give you Google, micro, mega, and market. And hopefully, you know that you need to use this in order to estimate what? To estimate what? Someone want to tell me? Yes, Abdul.
That beta by correlation, right?
Well, yeah. So equity beta, right? Because this is equity. Yeah.
Equity beta, sure.
Right. And by the way, I'm giving you more data than you need, right? Because which company, do you need to run 3 CAPM regressions, or do you only need to run 1, or do you only need to run 2? Yes, Nathan.
Yeah, only one.
Which one?
Google.
Google, right? Because you're getting the early stage discount rate, meaning you look at the early stage company. So are folks on the same page? Only 1 regression to run?
Yep.
Right? Yes, Ramsey.
I guess it's a quick question. So I'm just wondering, totally.
It's a quick question, but I literally can't hear it.
It should be better now.
Yeah, it's better.
So the risk-free rate here is 4%, which is not insignificant. So in that case, would we do raw on raw, or should we go the extra mile and do excess on excess?
Ramsey, we cannot do excess on excess. The reason is you need the historical riskless rate, not the current one.
Okay, so we can't just use the same rate across the period.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, simple answer, which is if I give you the data with no historical riskless return, like what we have here, you have no choice. You must run raw on raw version of CAPM. If I give you both, to be honest, I'll accept either regression. And maybe I could ask a question where I say, will the answer be different if you do raw on raw versus excess on excess? Give one reason why the answers could be materially different. Like I could ask a question like that. And that would be like the qualitative add-on to the just do the mechanics there kind of thing. We okay with that? Yes, Kits.
So like say, like if the roles were reversed, right? And we were using micro and Megasoft to
Yep.
get the beta for equity, right? If we got like, we get,
Okay, yeah, fine, go ahead.
yeah, so we get the beta of equity for Microsoft, beta equity for Megasoft, then will we just take the average of the two, like, or?
What, anyone want to answer that? So what Kits is asking is actually a good question, which is but let me like slightly alter the question so that it's a little bit more directed and
Go ahead.
which is like, let's take an alternative version of this question where instead of using a terminal multiple, which is what we're going to use here, instead we used a terminal discount rate, right? Like R stable as opposed to the R early that we're going to get with Google. We on the same page so far?
Yeah, okay.
Then the best way to do it, Kits, and by the way, hopefully everyone is listening, is the best way to get R stable in this case. Again, that's not what we're doing in this problem, but that is a perfectly, fair game thing for me to ask on the final. The best thing to do, Kits, is run the CAPM regression for micro, then go and calculate the WACC of micro.
Okay.
Do the CAPM regression for mega, then
Mhm.
the WACC for mega.
Okay.
Average those two WACCs.
So, okay, average the WACCs, not the beta.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, averaging the beta of equities, Kits, is like
It's bad.
suspect. It's bad. Yeah, the answer, it's bad.
Okay.
It's not far removed from not answering the problem, because it just shows
Okay.
you don't understand. Like it shows that there's something important that you didn't get from our discussion, which is the thing that is comparable between companies is either their WACC or their beta of asset. Remember, we talked about two methods for getting WACC from comparables when there's more than one. It was either approach one, average the WACCs, or approach two, average the beta of asset, plug into the CAPM, and then make an adjustment for your own capital structure.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
And I never told you to do average the beta of equity. And doing that is just flat out wrong. Now, on the exam, you will always be allowed to just average the WACCs. Most people find average the WACCs easier, including investment bankers. That's why it's pretty much always what you see them do in DEFM 14A filings, for instance. As you guys are all experts on now, as I imagine, because you guys did submit yesterday, I hope. Yeah, no, like averaging beta, like I could ask a question like, what's wrong? Like, is it acceptable to average beta of equity? And then hopefully you would say no. The reason is like, you and I could have the exact same beta of assets, but you have a way higher beta of equity because you've got a lot more leverage. Right. So now you can see comparing our betas of equity are like comparing apples and oranges, or whatever, like a pomelo with a clementine. I guess they're all in the orange family, but they're pretty damn different citruses, right? Pomelo is like a big orange from China, or I mean, it's probably in other places too, but I've seen them in China. Anywho, we okay with this so far?
Okay, yeah.
It's an important question that Kits asked, so hopefully people followed it, which is if instead of doing a terminal multiple, you did a terminal discount rate, you would use this data to get the equity beta of micro. You would use this data to get the equity beta of mega. However, you would not average those two things to get this, notion of an equity beta for Google. That would be flat out wrong. Instead, you would use this equity beta for micro, plug that into the CAPM to get the WACC of micro, do the same thing to get the WACC of mega. You would average those things and use that as the WACC for infinity. We okay with this? The alternative route is you could do approach 2, where you get beta of assets for micro, get beta of assets for mega, average that to have the beta of assets of infinity, plug that in to the CAPM, and then make your adjustment for the leverage of infinity. But that second approach, I generally think most people find more challenging than just average the WACCs. So my practical recommendation for you is to just average the WACCs. It's kind of less error prone. This helpful so far?
Yes.
By the way, I'm realizing, why in the world am I typing all this stuff? It turns out I have these solutions from some point, some X part of my life. I completely forgot about this. Good to know I solved them once. Okay. I'm actually going to build off of this the rest of the way, as opposed to just filling out everything like I've been doing so far. Folks, okay, like literally this is what we did earlier. And then I got to this number. Anyway, let's go to the WACC, right? So I run my CAPM. So like this tab here is just me running the regression, right? Again, I mean, I guess maybe if you guys don't know how to run a regression, I might as well show you, right? Data tab. Again, new computer, so having to install everything. There we go. This is a new button. I like it. So we remember a CAPM regression. Again, we're doing this version of the problem where we're getting the early discount rate using Google returns. Kaboom. And then X variable is always the market return. Again, we're doing X raw on raw because we don't have the historical riskless rate. I sure hope this is making you feel less scared about the exam, because like this is actually, I actually honestly believe this is somewhat reasonable. I mean, and this is our output. Folks, okay with this? This is just running the CAPM regression, and we know the slope coefficient is our beta. We okay with this so far? Now let me go. We got this here. Cost of debt is 4%. Why? Because we were told the debt beta is 0. If the debt beta is 0, the cost of debt is just the riskless rate. So that's easy. Cost of equity is just CAPM formula using our best guess of the equity beta. We okay with this so far? Percentage of Google that is debt. So we look at Google, right? It's 10 over 10 plus 190, i.e. 10 over 200, i.e. 5%. I mean, we can just take a look at it. Folks okay with this? This is just the definition of D over V. It's all like every individual step is not that challenging. It's just remembering the process. And then we just combined into our WACC. Oh yeah, okay. I was like, oh, I think I made a typo. But indeed, the tax rate was 35%. So 1 minus 35% times cost of debt times 5% plus the remaining 95% times the cost of equity, i.e. 10.64%. We okay with this so far? We can also figure out our, well, actually, before we get our, yes, Dara.
Yes, sorry, Professor, just on a high level. So we're finding the WACC because the question asks us for the WACC, right? And the infinity terminal value also asks us for that, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're just following the steps to get the WACC and the terminal value.
Of like coach you through it. I mean, but in some sense, you didn't need me to coach you through. I mean, look, I'm going to coach you through it because I figure don't want someone to get stuck at zero, basically. Like, in principle, once I said hybrid valuation with the unlevered PE as the terminal multiple, I didn't need to tell you to get the WACC, and I didn't need to tell you to get the terminal multiple because it's implied by, hybrid valuation and defining what the multiple is. But nonetheless, I kind of coach you through it somewhat. Sound good?
Yes, thank you. And the hybrid valuation, you said it's getting the terminal value using the terminal multiple, correct?
I mean, again, usually when I say hybrid valuation, I'm going to specify with a few words later on kind of how you're getting your terminal multiple, right? So like here, I basically said, with the unlevered PE ratio as your multiple. So like that tells you, now could I have said, hybrid valuation with terminal value gotten from a perpetuity formula? Yeah, I could have called it that. And then you would know what I'm saying. And then you would know, you would get the WACC of Microsoft, you would get the WACC of Mega, you would average those two things, and that would be your stable discount rate. See what I'm saying?
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we have our WACC. Actually, before we get our terminal multiple, I'll actually read the rest of the question because we can't even use the terminal multiple until we get our terminal attribute, and we can't get our terminal attribute until we start forecasting things out. So we might as well forecast things out, but before I'll take the hand up from now. For some reason, when someone has their hand up, I can't see their name. Was it Alice?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, on a side note, when we submit the final exam, should we use this answer key as a template of what it should look like? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, if you do it this way, it's organized enough that the grading is easier for us, but you don't have to do it this way. The only thing is make it coherent, because if it's not coherent, we may miss something.
Got it. Thank you.
But it doesn't need to look that way. Make it look the way that comes natural to you. You shouldn't slow yourself down to make it look the way that I made it look. This makes sense, comes natural to me. But yeah, anyway, so do what works for you, with the constraint of make it coherent to a grader that is not you. We okay with this? I shall assume that we are okay with this, given that no one is voicing up. Let's go back to the statement of the problem. I hope folks are okay with me being very deliberate in talking through this to give you a sense of hey, it's written this way here, but it could be done differently. It just is meant to give you guys a feel of what's fair game, right? Let's continue then. Okay, so in addition to the data above, you must obtain forecasts of the early stage cash flows from operations, i.e. cash flows ignoring payments to debt and equity. To obtain these, you use the following forecasts. Operating revenue equal to 3 billion at year 0, grow at a rate of 32% per year in the early stage. You will do a sensitivity analysis on this variable along with the WACC variable later on. Indeed, I now see that. Yeah, that's right. So I'm actually being pretty nice with the way I'm writing this. I'm literally telling you that you'll do a sensitivity. So I'm warning you multiple places what you're going to need to do a sensitivity. You have no excuse for not knowing that you should put the 32% outside of your cash flow table to make your life easier in part E. Okay. Operating expense equal to 2.2 billion at year 0, grow at a rate of 75% of the growth rate in the operating revenues in the early stage, i.e. in the baseline case, 0.75 times 0.32, 24%. So far, so good. Hopefully folks understand from this is if the growth rate was 40% instead of 32, then the growth, that by the way, for revenues, then the growth rate would be 30% rather than 24% for expenses. We see that? It's 75% of whatever number you're assuming for the revenues. Again, in the baseline, it's 32, but it'll be 37 and 27 in the sensitivity analysis as well. Depreciation, 100 million year 0, grows at a rate of 10% per year in the early stage. I'm making your life easy in the depreciation case. Capital expenditures, no purchases going forward, but you will sell one asset for 80 million at year 5. At that point, the asset will have a book value of 50 million. So whatever, you have like a capital sale with a capital gains tax implication. Working capital, 10% of operating revenue at each point in time. Folks, okay with the fact like this is not meant to be hugely, like this is not that complex. It's maybe slightly more complex than problem 1 on homework 1, but not much. So shall I just go ahead and show you? So this is our stuff. Right, 3 times the 30. Notice I put this is important. I put the 32%, i.e. rev growth, outside of my cash flow table because it's going to make my life easier when I do the sensitivity analysis later on. Like this should come second nature to you. I put enough warnings in the problem. Yes, Kits.
As a rule of thumb, like any growth, should we just like put like, does it have to be revenue specifically? Like if you mentioned like operating revenue, like if there was a different growth rate for expenditures, would you also want to exclude that as well, or just revenue growth?
I mean, revenue is like the one you need to put out there. I think what Kits is saying is, could you also put the operating expense growth outside as well? The answer is you could, but since it's a function of the revenue growth, you don't need to, because it's all changing as a function of this. But yeah, you could do that. It's just maybe some people would feel it takes a little bit more time to do. I mean, that's a personal choice thing.
Okay.
But like, I would say it would be a mistake. It would be an obvious mistake not to keep that outside, right? Keeping everything else inside is doable, I guess is my point.
Okay.
But are folks okay with what I have? I mean, this is like pretty straightforward, right? It's just, you know, now it's grown 2 periods. I mean, you could do this formulaically a whole host of different ways. But everyone is like, this is meant to be easy, right? The only thing is keep this outside the table. And you know, what that means is when I change this, notice that column automatically changes. That's the beauty of leaving our sensitivity analysis variables outside the table. Are we okay with this so far? Right? Here, it's like, you know, we started at 2.2 at time 0. That was stated in the problem. And then we grow it at what? At 1 plus 75% of the revenue growth rate, because that was stated in the problem, correct? And then, you know, for 1 year, then for 2 years, for 3 years, yada. Yes? And then, you know, all I do here is the normal 1 minus tax rate times the difference between those two things. That's all mechanical. Yes? Tax times depreciation, i.e. our depreciation tax shield. Let me reread the problem because I don't even remember what I said for that. Depreciation, 100 million in year 0. This is all in units of billions. So 0.1 is, right, so if we go here, 0.1 is our depreciation from a year earlier, right, 100 million, grown at 10% times our tax rate. And then we just take that number and grow it by 1.1 every year, because I was saying it's growing by 10% per year. I basically made depreciation easy in this problem, I guess is my point. We okay with this? Capex is relatively easy. You just need to do one thing because I say it's zero everywhere except for the presence of a capital sale. Remember, a sale is a negative expense. So I receive, was it 80 million? Did I say 80 million? I think I said 80 million. Yeah. I receive 80 million, but when I sell it, there's a $30 million gain that I need to pay 35% tax on. And so the net receipt is the 80 million I was paid minus the tax I had to pay. That's a negative expenditure, which is why I enter it as a negative. We okay with this? Like, dealing with a capital sale should be second nature to you. Maybe even before this course, actually, right? Working capital, I was, right, remember, if I only mention accounts receivable, assume every other component, inventory, accounts payable, are zero. How in the world could you solve it without making an assumption like that? If it's not mentioned, always the default is assume it's zero. Okay. Here, I went straight to telling you working capital was 10% of operating revenue. So 10% of operating revenue. Do all that stuff. Then calculate change in working capital. By the way, you know that your working capital at time zero was 10% of the 3 billion in revenue the year before. That's why I do minus 0.1 times 3 here. I just did that rather than including a row for time zero. Folks, okay with that? Right, and we don't need to include cash flow at time zero because that always for a company like this, assume that that's a sunk cash flow. Unless I'm telling you explicitly, you're spending money right now, right, to make an investment or something like that. And then the rest of the way, it's just this differencing like we've always done. We okay with this?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat what you said about at t equals 1 for the working capital?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just, all I'm saying is it's working capital at time one minus working capital at time zero, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And working capital at time zero, I know was 10% of the 3 billion in revenue at time zero. And we were told revenue at time zero was 3 billion in the problem.
Oh, okay, sorry, thank you.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's just that this cell looks a little bit different from all the others because I just went and manually calculated working capital at time zero. So that's it.
Yeah, sorry, can you please repeat regarding the why you are not taking the cash flow at T0? I mean, isn't it like should be included in the value of the company? Why not?
In like, so generally when we value an ongoing concern like this, we assume that at this point in time, there's no real cash flow that's happening right now, right? And so like usually for companies, we assume cash flow zero is sunk. Because, like on an annual basis, like the thing that happened at time zero, what actually happened is it happened over the last year. The amount of it that happened right now is negligible. The only case where we kind of generally pay close attention to what happens at time zero is if the company is making a big purchase, like a big Capex, for instance, right now. You see what I'm saying? I mean, this is pretty much a universal rule of thumb. So for instance, if you look at my Amazon valuation, I didn't have a time zero cash flow, right? Usually the time zero cash flow, it's when you're valuing a project where your project will require a big Capex right now if you do it right now. I mean, that's a pretty simple rule of thumb, right? Project, there's a time zero cash flow. Ongoing concern valuation of a company, usually not a time zero. I mean, unless that company is doing something big at the moment.
It's doing some project, you mean?
It's literally just starting a project right now.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And what I just said makes sense, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it should all make sense.
Yeah, I agree.
should. Doesn't always happen, but anywho, now we just cash flow formula it. And then, NPV of highlighting our discount rate and our cash flows. I mean, again, I can use this NPV formula because the first cash flow is at time 1, right? Remember, the NPV formula in Excel always assumes your first cash flow is at time 1. So if you have a time 0 cash flow, you only include in the NPV formula the cash flows starting at time 1 and beyond, and then you manually add the cash flow at time 0 outside of the NPV function. Again, not an issue here because there's no time 0 cash flow. I mean, these are things you should, presumably folks know. We okay with this so far? Right, and what we've done so far is we found the present value of the early cash flows, where we were told that the early phase was 10 years. Now, the final thing that we need to do is we need to figure out our terminal value, right? And then once we have our terminal value, we will discount it. That's a value at time 10, right? We'll get that value at time 10 using using our multiples-based valuation. And we will then discount that valuation to time 0, again using our Google WACC, because we, even for the terminal value, we bring down to time 0 with the early discount rate because it's the first 10 years. So yeah, let's go. The first thing we need to do is get a target multiple. So let's go and figure out our target multiple. Remember, you were told in the problem, it's the unlevered PE ratio. So you just need to know your definition of the unlevered PE ratio. We did it in class, right? So it was value of the firm. So 190 plus 10 over earnings plus 1 minus tax times interest. Again, like this is literally a slide in our topic 1, part 2, right? The multiples part. So earnings was 9 plus 1 minus tax rate times 0.4. So unlevered P ratio, well, I mean, we don't actually need to get it for Google, but I did it because it doesn't take any more time. But the numbers that matter are the Microsoft and Megasoft. Everyone okay with me saying it's the same damn formula? And then we just average those two. By the way, if you include Google in your thing, you lose points because that's wrong. Because infinity will no longer be Google when it's will no longer look like Google looks right now when they stabilize. When they stabilize, they will more likely look like Microsoft, like the way Microsoft and Megasoft look right now. Like that's an important logic, right? So we average that, we get 11.86 as our terminal multiple. To get our terminal value, we need to multiply that by our adjusted earnings. Sorry about that, I'm losing my voice as I said. Our adjusted earnings at time 10. How do we get our adjusted earnings at time 10? Well, I gave you that formula in the statement of the problem. Right? So it was, by the way, this is actually a weird way to write it. But this is equivalent, right? So it's 1 minus tax times EBITD, right? Which is H28, right? The one at time 10, minus 1 minus 35% times depreciation, the tax times depreciation divided by tax. I mean, actually, I can see how people look at this and are like, what the F? But all this is, let me actually just switch to the slides. sorry, switch to the statement of the problem. I'll demystify that. Do folks find this confusing? No? Okay. I mean, it's really, you guys are difficult to read.
It's confusing.
Yes, it's confusing.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and unconfusify this whole thing. So 1 minus tax times EBITD minus depreciation minus interest. Right, I mean, that's basically like, so one might, oh, wait a second here. I think I might have made a typo in my statement of the problem. I apologize for that. I wanted it to be EBITD minus depreciation, not minus the interest. So I apologize for that, or at least my solution is going to do that. But so disregard the minus int here and take EBITD minus depreciation. So we've got our so what we want to, I'm just going to write it down here, okay? So 1 minus tax
Giro, where are you writing it? Because we cannot see.
Oh, shoot, that's right. I'm sorry. I don't have that great habit of last year when I was teaching everything on Zoom. I was pretty good. I was a maestro at doing all this switching, but I am out of practice now. Now you can see it, yes? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Folks, okay with me saying this is just 1 minus tax EBITD minus 1 minus tax depreciation, yes? And then 1 minus tax EBITD T minus, I'm just going to do something, it's going to seem silly, but it's going to explain the formula that I have in my cell. Do you see, like, all I did is I multiplied by tax in the numerator and divided by tax in the denominator, which is just like multiplying by 1. Do we agree with that?
Do you mind just zooming in a little bit, please?
Oh yeah, sure. This better? So like, again, so everyone seemed to be okay with the first step. So going from this to going to this. Yes? Right, that was just a simple math expansion. And then going from this to going to this, the only thing I did is I took depreciation and literally multiplied it by tax over tax, which is like not changing it. But now if we look at this number here is the first number that I have here. This was exactly that, 1 minus tax times EBITD. And then what was the second term that I had here? It was the one that I think confused people, which was 1 minus tax times I-28. But what is I-28? I-28 was tax times depreciation. So tax times depreciation. So we need to take 1 minus tax times depreciation, and then we need to divide it by tax, which is why I divided by tax at the end. And I'm rather certain it was the whole divided by tax thing that looked really weird to you. The reason why you had to do it is because I decided to make my column tax times depreciation. If instead you had made your column depreciation, the formula would make a lot more sense to you, because it would have just been 1 minus tax times that column. So if you find that second alternative that I just said in words better, then you've got a simple answer for you on the exam. Do not do tax times depreciation like I did. Create a depreciation column, and then your formula is a lot more intuitive because it's super tightly linked to the definition, right? It's just this. We okay with that? And by the way, again, I apologize. There was a typo in the formula. I was not supposed to subtract interest. We okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. So now, next step, we just multiply these two numbers together. And that gives us 223.7 million, right? And that is our terminal value at time 10. And then what do? We discount that back to today. But remember, you use the early stage discount rate to bring this terminal value from time 10 to time 0. All discounting from 0 to 10 is done using this 10.64%. So that gives us 81.36 million. The 28.33 million was what we had calculated earlier. Add the two together, and that gives us 109.69 million. If we want to get the value of equity, we need to subtract the amount of debt that Infinity has. We were told that Infinity has 5 million in debt. Was it million or billion? Billion. So about 104.69 billion is the value of Infinity's equity. Are we on the same page here?
Yep.
Good, thank you. All I need is one person to say okay, because you guys are all the same, right? So, yep. We cannot S. Yes. Okay, I don't know.
Sorry, could you just show the how you change the Infinity adjusted earnings formula, like completely on the screen?
This one right here?
Exactly. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Did you just take a picture of it with your phone or something?
I did a screenshot.
You did, yeah, that's the same thing. Okay, that was the way to do it. But like at the end of the day, this was you'll look at it and you'll be like, okay, that's just like simple rejigging. Although I will say I can totally see how like what seems like really simple rejigging to me, because I've done it, you know, doesn't seem so simple to you because there's a bit of a learning curve. So I get it. Again, like my view is for most people, so I'll say it again just because I want folks to understand, you know what? Why don't I just show it instead? I'm going to show it. I think that'll be better than saying it in words. If I were to redo this, I would just change this column and call it depreciation. And if it's depreciation, I get rid of that damn tax rate. Now I've got a depreciation column. Now I need to change my cash flow column. Right? My cash flow column now, it should be I-19 times tax, so 0.35 times this. I'm back to the same answer as before. But now my life here is a lot easier because I get rid of this. And I think this formula is a hell of a lot more intuitive to you. And notice my answer has not changed. So you might actually prefer to do it the way that I just showed you because it doesn't require you to rejig variable definitions. Do folks actually find that easier? Yes or no? Again, my view is I'm guessing divided by tax is just something you're like, huh? Anyway, I mean, that's my guess. I mean, my intuition could be wrong. I don't know you, and you don't speak enough for me to learn that much. So yes, yeah.
So Giro, when I want to get the value at terminal, like, and then multiply it by the multiple, you started by having an adjusted earning, and you use this formula. Can't we use like the last cash flow and take it from there?
Yeah, but it's not cash flow. I said it's a PE ratio. It's an unlevered PE ratio. So you need to use the denominator in the unlevered PE ratio, which is this thing I called adjusted earnings.
Okay, I got it. But it's not that different. in terms of like.
Yeah, but it is different, and we will spot the difference if you because I could come up with an example where they're quite different. So like it's important for you to know the difference.
Yeah, because it's leverage. Like the only way it won't be different if there is no leverage.
I mean, it's non-negligibly different. 18.86 versus 17.95. It's a 5% difference. I mean, sure, I get it, you know, like plus minus 5% is kind of maybe small compared to the whole of it all, but like, you know, that you don't want to lose 5% accuracy for no good reason. So like, just trust me when I say, if we graded that and use cash flow, like you lose substantial points. Because it's just wrong. It's kind of like just because there's a lot of room for error doesn't mean you should accept all sorts of like corner cutting. Like the stuff you can do right, do right. Anywho, I think I don't need to belabor that point. Yes, yes, Dara, right?
Yes, sorry, Professor. There's so many different points and steps to do. So what possible things could you do to lose marks on all these?
There's a lot of things you could do to lose marks. Actually, but it's good that you asked that question because I don't know how other people grade you. So I don't know if it's something where like, if you get the number wrong, you lose all your points, or whether you get credit for the parts you did right. My guess is it may depend on the professor, but I don't know. I've never taken their courses, but this is how it works with me, which is when your answer is exactly right, you have made our life easy, you get all your points. When your answer is different, we actually look at your calculations and figure out what parts did you do right and what parts did you do wrong, and you get partial credit for the parts you did right. So if it's a 5-point question and we view that there are 5 equally valuable parts to it. And by the way, it's not always the case that all parts are equally valuable. We make a judgment call. Well, we don't make a judgment call. We actually have a rule before we start the grading, and we stick to it consistently across all people. But let's hypothetically go with 5 parts within a 5-point question, equally important. That means each part is worth 1 point. Let's say you got 2 of the 5 parts wrong and 3 of the 5 parts right. You'll get 3 out of 5 points. I'm actually going to say something else that you might be grateful for, which is, say you got it wrong in part A of the problem. And then we look at now your part B. If part B builds on part A, there's no doubt you will have the wrong answer, even if you do the rest of it right in part B. Do we agree with that statement?
Yeah.
We see that. We ask the question, did you get part B right, conditional on your error in part A? And if the answer to that question is yes, you don't lose additional points in part B. In other words, we don't compound your errors. In other words, look, we're using the policy that is trying to reward you for all the things you do right, as opposed to like swinging the hammer for any mistake you make. That's how we approach the grading, right? And so hopefully that'll make you a little bit less worried that by making a mistake in an early part, you torpedo your whole exam. Again, look, to me, that seems to be the right way to do grading, right? But again, like I don't know what how other faculty do that. It's definitely a more time-consuming way to do the grading, but I think it's the right way. By the way, let me say one thing about Planet Earth versus Planet My grading scheme. In Planet Earth, your mistakes compound, right? So if you make the mistake and you reuse the mistake over and over again, you fuck yourself more and more, right? But like on the in this exam, just because like I know in a timed exam things can be unforgiving, and so I try to make my grading policy a bit more forgiving than the real world, to balance the fact that in the real world you wouldn't have this level of time constraint. Yes, Harsh, you have a question?
Oh yeah, just since we're on this topic, what if there's like a syntax error that like results in a wrong number? So let's say you forget a bracket or something like that, then what is the policy on that? Because chances are I'm one of those students.
Yeah, like, you know, if I mean, so the thing is, like, it kind of depends whether it's easy to spot it or not, right? Like at the end of the day, I can't, you know, myself, I'm going to grade some of it. The TAs are going to grade some of it. Like we can't be expected to spend an hour trying to figure out where was a mistake made, right? So we spend like a bit of time trying to figure out where the mistake is at. And so if we spot it, and if we see it's pretty clear, like, oh, that was a silly typo, then yeah, I mean, we don't swing the hammer on the whole question, right? We find the parts that you did right. And then after that part, we don't compound. Presumably, like your typo will be at a specific part of those 5 parts. You see what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, make every goddamn like typo known to mankind, to humankind, then there's not much I can do, right? Like, you may have something you need to kind of work at for the future. But like a typo doesn't kill you, right? We try to figure it out. But we may miss, right? We may miss it. It may be such a bad typo that we're like, oh my, like what in the world is this person thinking? I mean, if that happens, that happens, you know? We try our best.
Fair enough. Thank you.
We do understand that people make typos. God knows I make them. Not only do I make them, I am sure there are still typos in the documents I've given you guys. And I've taught this class for a few years. So, you know, it would be a little bit weird for me to like swing the hammer at you. Right. So yeah. Yeah, we try to spot it. And we look, at the end of the day, we try to give you the benefit of the doubt. So we approach the exam saying, let's find all the good things you did. That's the spirit of the grading scheme. So, you know, hopefully that seems, again, like to me, it just seems like the right way to do it. Are we okay here? Yes, no, maybe?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Okay, so what have we done so far? Are folks okay with me saying, like, so far we have established that the value of infinity per our model, the value of infinity's equity specifically is 104.69 million. Do we agree with that? And the value of the whole firm, debt plus equity, was 109.69. Yeah? So let me go back to the question and continue to read details. La la la.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can, of course.
So the value we got for infinity is the total value, including that, because we use the unlevered earnings, right?
Pardon me?
I mean, the value, the 109, which we got directly from adding, I mean, the early stage cash flows and the terminal value. It includes the debt because this is like we use the unlevered cash flows, right?
Exactly. And kind of, you know, like, look, for the purpose of this class, we've always done that, right? our cash flows have been cash flows from operations.
Yeah, I'm just confirming.
When we NPV that, we get an enterprise value. In this particular, by the way, so let's actually make sure, this is important. So let's make sure we don't forget this. Our PV of all the cash flows is enterprise value, right? And so, right, so like now the question is like, how much debt do you have and how much cash do you have? In this particular case, I don't mention anything about cash that the company has, so we assume it's zero. Right? But depending on what I ask, you know, you might need to make an adjustment for cash. We wouldn't need to do it here because the equity value should include the cash value anyway. Oh wait, actually, if there was cash, like, okay, why don't I ask you guys? If the company had $200 million of cash, or that's a small number compared to 105 billion. If it had $10 billion in cash, what would be the PV of equity? Someone want to answer that for me? Because you should know. Oh, well, let me actually go back to the spreadsheet. Right here, I was assuming no cash. If the company had $10 billion in cash, what would happen to the value of this equity? Yes, Hugo.
It would go up by 10.
It would go up by 10 billion, right? Because this is the value of the firm, not including the cash. Because it was operating cash flows, which gives you the value of operating assets. Cash is a non-operating asset. So the value of the whole company needs to be bumped up by that cash.
I have a quick question. Sorry.
Yeah, David, go ahead.
About the cash part. Unless it specifies that that cash was raised through debt, then, I mean, it wouldn't go into equity. If that cash was raised like through debt, like a debt offering, like
well, I mean, let's say I issued $50 billion of debt right now and kept that as cash proceeds.
Yeah.
The net value of my company through that transaction to the prior owners of the company, has that gone up or no? So prior owners, do they magically own more now? No, right? So, you know, but has debt gone up all of a sudden? Yes, right? It's gone up by how much? 50 billion, right? So debt has gone up by 50 billion, but old debt plus old equity has not changed. So it must, the cash has gone up, right? So, and they exactly offset cancel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, the simple punchline is if I threw into this problem, and by the way, I could do this. If I said, hey, by the way, the company has $10 billion of debt, then you should know the value of the equity goes up by another 10 billion because the equity owns this stuff, but they also own another $10 billion. So yeah, that's that. Again, there was no cash here, so that was not an issue there. I see a chat comment, so let me see what it says. Should we account for cash adjusted PE2? Okay, so Victor is basically at like that depends on what I quote to you as the multiple to use, right? So if I say use the cash adjusted unlevered PE, then use the cash adjusted unlevered PE. If I say just use the unlevered PE, then do not use the cash adjusted. So I will tell you exactly which one to use on the exam. Sound good? Perfect. So yeah, no, it's not going to be something where it's kind of left to a mystery. It's use the one that I tell you, even if you're like, shit, like that's not the one I would use. Use the one I tell you. And again, it's totally fair game for me to say something afterwards like, oh, you know, I told you to use this one. Which one would you have used instead and why? Then you might say something like, well, you know what? I would have used the cash adjusted because of this reason. Does that make sense as well? Good. Again, hopefully this gives you a feel of the style of qualitative questions that I can ask. And hopefully what you guys feel like is every qualitative question that I'm mentioning follows very naturally from the quantitative stuff you're doing in the problem, and really hitting on the big ticket, do you get it level, as opposed to the like super detail oriented, like in the weeds, you know, nerd level shit, you know? Yeah, anywho. Let's keep on going through this. What am I sharing right now? I'm sharing, let me go back to the spreadsheet. What were we saying? Okay, so we have our valuation, right? So what terminal value year 10? So we figured that out. According to hybrid valuation was the value of Infinity as a whole and the value of Infinity's equity at year 0, right? So that was our 109 and our 104. We good with this? So we've solved everything in terms of part A through part D. So now we get to part E. So part E was our sensitivity analysis. Now, look, let me tell you the simple version of a sensitivity analysis that I could have asked, right? Which is I could say, well, what happens to the value of equity as we change our 32% to down to 27% or up to 37%? And as we change our WACC from 10.64% plus minus 1% 2 times, right? So I could have asked that. That would be the easy version of part E. So why don't I show you how to do that first? And then I'll show you how to do this slightly tougher version that has some weird, some slightly unusual things here, but that are actually meant to be fairly logical. Okay? Are we cool with that? I'll do the easy thing first, and then I'll do this, the tougher one that is shown here. Okay, again, I shall assume that folks are cool with that. So let me go back to the spreadsheet. So the easy version, which is not what we have in this problem, would be, we've got rev growth, right? Rev growth, 0.27, 0.32, 0.37. And then we had 10.64%. Remember, I mean, this is a set two-way sensitivity analysis, so we just create a box, loosely speaking, right? Hopefully you understand what I mean by create a box. I mean, this is you are expected to know how to do this. Right, but we need to define, right, the perimeter of our box first, right? And then what I said is we put the formula of the thing we need to compute. Well, if it's equity value, then we highlight cell C36 because that is our ultimate formula for value of equity, where we know the way I've set everything up so far, if I change either the WACC cell or I change the revenue growth cell, the 32% that I put outside of my cash flow table, if I change either of those cells, everything recomputes the way that I set up my solution so far. Do we all see that? Like, this is something you need to be comfortable with, because this goes to the essence of making you productive in generating valuations. Because, you know, if you work at an investment bank, they're already asking you to work 100 hours a week. If you're not productive, they're asking you to work 200 hours a week. Do the math. It leaves you with negative hours for the rest of your life. Sorry, impossible. If you need to do that, you're fired, right? So like, that ain't gonna work. So you gotta be productive. Like, this is basic core skills, right? Okay, but now that we've done this, you know, it's just data table. So we highlight this box. Then we click data. Whoops, data. What if analysis? Where is what if analysis? Data table. And then row input cell. This is the row input cell. We know that that's growth. Column input cell is WACC. So now we just go look at our template. Where is our row input cell? Our row input cell was cell F17. That's why we put it outside of the box. We wouldn't be able to do this without having it outside of the box. And then what about our column input cell? Well, it's this guy. Okay. Done. This is our two-way sensitivity analysis, right? This is telling us that if we have a 37% growth rate, okay, what just happened here? I think there's something with a reference thing here, so I'm going to have to paste special this into values. There we go. Always good to look at your numbers to see if they make sense. So note to everybody here, I created my box by referencing -1% plus 1% in both directions. After you do that, copy this whole part and paste special into values, because we just saw, at least the version of Excel here, goes a little bit of loco when your perimeter is defined formula style instead of value style. Did everyone get that? This is important because your answer is wrong otherwise. So make sure that these numbers are entered as numbers, not formulas. Right? You can see entered as a number, not as a formula, which means create it first as a formula, then Control-C, paste values. It's as easy as that. It takes 1 second. If you don't do that and you have it wrong, you will lose points because it means you don't know how to do it. Yes, yeah.
So you're just shifting the WACC by 1% upwards and downwards, right?
Yeah. And remember, and that's because I said you do a sensitivity analysis going plus minus 2% at 1% increments. And then I said plus minus 5% with 5% increments on the growth.
Because maybe I'm mistaken. I'm trying to do it. I'm getting different numbers. Can you you just take the 0.1064 and you multiply it by 99 or by 1.01?
Nope. You say -1%, -1%.
Can you show me the formula if you don't mind?
Well, what I did initially was I said this equals to this. Right? Yes. And then I said, this equals this plus 0.01. Then I formula styled it down. Then I said this equals this minus 0.01. Okay. And then I formula styled this up. But then very importantly, once I had the numbers correct here, I did Control-C, and then I said, right click, paste special, values, and that made it numbers. Because we have just established that data, that a data table goes a little bit, loco when the numbers in the perimeter are not actual numbers, but are formulas. Are we okay with this? So just remember that. It's a simple additional statement. Just take these numbers and take these numbers and make sure you have them as numbers, not formulas. The easy way to do that is Control-C your formula that you used to generate the perimeter and paste it as values. It's as simple as that. Yes, Alice.
Sorry, I don't fully understand the 104.69 part. Could you click on that so I can?
Yeah, this was the ultimate formula that we were using that we had set up template style.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, because remember, this always needs to be the final answer of your template.
And it needs to be in this chart as equal C36, not just the number.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Exactly. If you type, by the way, if you type 104, whatever, I'm just going to type it 104. I think do you know what's going to happen now?
The data won't.
Yeah, you'll get this.
Yeah.
Right. So Megan, like, look, this is basically this is a way, it's actually a pretty smart way for that Microsoft came up with, where you're effectively teaching the program your formula. But the program needs to know your formula, and without having this equals to your ultimate template answer, how in the world could they know? There's no magic to be had. Make sense?
Yeah, so would you like for sensitivity analysis, would you always ask the question about like doing it based on the terminal value, or would you ask us to do a sensitivity analysis of like a different number in this question?
I could do a different number. I could say like, well, first of all, I could say do a two-way sensitivity analysis where one of the variables you adjust is the terminal multiple, is the terminal discount rate, right? As opposed to like, look, probably with a two-way WACC is always going to be one of them, right? But the second thing here, what I did is I made it a cash flow forecast parameter, the revenue growth rate. But I could also make it a terminal value related number, like the terminal discount rate or the terminal multiple.
Got it. Thank you.
So literally, like, be ready for like any two things. At the end of the day, it's all about, do you know how to set up a template? When I tell you which variables to keep outside of the template, you should be able to do any one of them. But the usual suspects are WACC, growth, multiple. Yes, Emma.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I got this right. So the row input cell, that's the 0.32. And then the column input cell, that would be our 104.69.
No, column.
I'm not sure about the column.
Yeah, column input cell is like, row input cell was this F17 because that's where the 32% was. And the column input cell is the 10.64 because that was where our WACC was.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, like definitely without a shadow of a doubt, right? The column input cell is never, ever this thing. That's a guarantee. We okay with this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now, Andrew, Emma, do you have another question or is that the hand up from before? Okay, thank you. Yes, Andrew.
So I want to clarify the difference between early WACC and growth WACC. So in this question here, we used early WACC to find the present value of the early cash flows, but also the valuation.
Yep.
So when would we use the late stage WACC?
Okay, so basically if I call, okay, let's actually get anchored on terminology here. If I call it early WACC, you know that I mean early WACC. If I call it WACC and don't specify a period, it's early WACC. It means the WACC right now. So far, so good? If I'm referencing stable WACC, terminal WACC, late WACC, these terms are interchangeable, then now you know what I mean. And what way is late, terminal, stable WACC useful? It's because the way you get your terminal value now is now cash flow at time t+1 divided by R stable minus G stable, so that you get your terminal value using a perpetuity formula, but where the R in your perpetuity formula is the stable WACC. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you only use it for the terminal value calculation?
100%. You only use the stable WACC for getting the terminal value. Every other R you use in your valuation template is the early WACC.
Okay.
Including the R that you use to discount the terminal value to time 0 by discounting by T periods. Even for that one, you use the early WACC.
Okay. So we only need the late stage WACC for the terminal value calculation.
i.e.
where R minus G.
Exactly, in the perpetuity formula for the terminal value. That is
So if it wasn't
the way you use it.
If it wasn't a growing perpetuity, it would just be C over R, and you would use that as well, right?
Exactly. If the growth rate was 0 once you hit terminal, then it would just be C over R. But that's the same formula. It's just you've plugged in G equals 0.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I just remember the growing perpetuity, and I just remember if there's no growth, G is 0. Life easier.
Right. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, Camilla.
Just to double check, that's the WACC that you used when you did the third refinement on the Amazon example, right? Like that's a stable long-term WACC.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, I say like when you calculated the terminal value in the third refinement on the Amazon example, that's the WACC you use, right? There, you use it there, like the long-term WACC.
The third refinement. I mean, remember, like, so first of all, let me be clear. This is not the type of question that I would ask on the exam, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because I do not want anyone to spend time looking that far into the weeds for, like, if you want to do it to prepare yourself for the real world, that's great. And I support that. But don't do that as a preparation strategy for the final exam, because I would never ask that. But to answer your question nonetheless, Camilla, in my third refinement, I did 2 valuations. I did perpetuity style, and I did terminal multiple style, right? So in the perpetuity style one, the R I used was indeed the stable WACC, which I had maybe obtained from, man, I don't even remember. Because like at the end of the day, I really only care about the fourth one I got. So I don't remember like all the steps I took, right? But I think I may have, used the stable WACC, and I used the stable WACC getting it from, does anyone remember? Did I get it just from like the S&P 500?
Yeah, from Bloomberg.
I got what did I get from Bloomberg?
You got the terminal WACC, like the stable WACC from Bloomberg, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but like, was I assuming in that third refinement that R is constant over time, or no? I don't remember.
Oh no, so what I think Camilla was talking about is for the first 10 years or the first 5 years you're valuing Amazon, you use a different WACC. And then after that terminal value, you use like the stable WACC, which he's referring to. And that stable WACC is what you got from Bloomberg data, I think, if I remember correctly.
Anyway,
unless I'm confusing you guys more.
Let me put it this way. I don't even remember. Right. I just don't remember like how much thinking I put on the discount rate in the perpetuity valuation of third refinement in Amazon valuation. Because like, I kind of took a midway point between, something super naive and getting to the ultimate right answer that allows for market conditions to change. Right. And I just don't remember where I put that midway mark. It's kind of neither here nor there, because that wasn't my final destination. It's like, if I'm taking a flight to China and there's going to be one stop, I don't pay as much attention whether I'm stopping in like South Korea or I'm stopping in Tokyo, whatever, I'm getting the fucking China. So I just don't remember that level of detail, but the way I set up my template, at least, Camilla, was definitely probably allowing. I can answer the final answer. The final answer is, for the terminal value, I took a stand on a terminal WACC in the fourth refinement for sure, because I know that once I get to the end, I've done that. So hopefully that helps. But the exact assumption that I made in refinement 3, I honestly don't remember, because it's not that pivotal. What's pivotal is what I have at the fourth refinement, which is why I never paid attention to the numbers I got for valuations that much. at the end of, refinement 1, refinement 2, refinement 3, refinement. It was only after refinement 4 that I was like, okay, let's pay attention to this now. Yes, yeah.
Just intuitively, when you did the multiple and then you wanted to get the present value discounted by the WACC of the early stage, is there a reason for that? Like, why do people want to do that and not because they are discounting something that they think in 10 years is going to be stable? Why didn't use the WACC as a stable company?
Because it only stabilizes starting year 10. Over the first 10 years, it's still not stable.
So whatever I'm doing a calculation, I just see it from a view of it's still growing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thanks.
That's always the way you think about it. We good? So now let's go to the tougher part of this question. By the way, let me say one thing, because it sure looks like we're spending 3 hours for one question. I hope everyone understands. If we weren't chit-chatting through a lot of stuff, and you guys have asked good questions, like this is not a question that takes a shitload of time to do. Like, I actually think this question, it should be doable. Like, it shouldn't take more than an hour to do this question. And in fact, someone who's very comfortable can maybe do it, 30 minutes. Again, like if you're not comfortable yet, totally understandable. So if you're like 30 minutes, no way, right? But like, I think an hour is doable after you kind of are comfortable with it, even at this stage. It's just, you guys have asked a lot of questions. We've been very deliberate. I've given you guys a bunch of different ways that I could have asked the question. We've adjusted stuff. That's why this takes time. But hopefully by talking about all these permutation and addressing your questions, you guys feel more broadly prepared for this style of question. Is that a reasonable feeling that I have or no? So at least Abdullah is feeling better prepared. So it's always good, success 1 out of 52. I know 1 out of 51 because I'm one of the people in the room. 1 out of 51 is better than 2, even better. I'm starting to feel good now. Anywho, let's actually read through this actual question, because this question had a teeny twist, but hopefully you'll agree with me that it's a teeny twist that should, like, that if you're comfortable is doable. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Given the assumptions listed above, how much of the firm would Infinity have to sell at year 0 to raise 1.5 billion in cash needed to finance the Pixtogram purchase? So as we said, we established that the company's worth about $104.69 billion. That is before they acquire Pixtogram. Now, if they were to acquire Pixtogram for 1.5 billion, right? What would be the value of the company post, let me just go back to sharing my spreadsheet. Boom, spreadsheet. Right? What would be the value of the company after acquisition? It would be this value plus this value. Now, notice this is in millions and this is in billions. So I need to divide the millions by 1,000 to get into units of billions. Are we on the same page here? Right? So the value of the company after acquisition would be this. They have to pay this. I just said, like, you have to pay. By the way, if you're asking, like, why would they do this? This is less than this. Fine. I'm just telling you that they're doing it. Right? So you just take it as given that they're doing that. Well, if they need to finance this by selling equity, well, now the equity is worth this much. 1.42% of this is this. In other words, this number divided by this number, that's the amount of equity you would need to issue in the post-acquisition company in order to finance the $1.5 billion cost. Do we agree with this statement? Yes or no? It's about thinking about the fact that, like, after the acquisition, how much are you worth? Oh, you're worth $200 billion. Well, if you were raising 20 billion by selling some of the equity, you would need to sell 10% of the 200 billion, right? In order to raise 1.5 billion in the post-acquisition company equity, you need to sell 1.42%, right? Which is this number of equity. Right? And in my statement of the problem, what I say is it's actually this number, not this number, that you are doing a sensitivity analysis on. So you're not doing a sensitivity analysis on value. You're doing a sensitivity analysis on another number that is related to the value. And so you need to know how to do that logical hop, right? To go from the value, 104.69, to the fraction of equity that you sell, 1.42%. And that's the challenging part of this problem. By the way, on this problem, it's a 4-point problem. If you get this thing totally batshit wrong, but then you do your data table correctly, you get 2 out of 4 points, even if this thing is just nonsensical, right? So that's how it decomposes, is 2 points. Did you go successfully from this to this? And then 2 points, did you end up at least, whatever you put in here, did you at least set up the rest of it right? That's another 2 points. In other words, the part that's challenging here is not going to kill you if you get it wrong. It's 2 points. You get it? I mean, I'll go Yaya first, then I'll go Kits.
Giro, here the 1.42% is from the equity total of the company, not from the whole company.
Yeah, but that's sure. I'm getting tired.
What if I do the other?
You guys must be fucking tired. Okay. Because I do know it's easier to talk than it is to listen. Well, at least for me. I'm guessing for most humans. Let's see. So I'm just looking at the wording of my problem.
Yeah, exactly. This is
given the, how much of the firm would Infinity? You know what? Given my wording, Yaya, I would end up accepting both answers. So if you did it not on the 104 baseline, but you did it on the 109 baseline, I would accept that answer too. By the way, at the end of the day, I don't have a PhD in writing. I don't think I have a kindergarten degree in writing. So thankfully that does not get in the way of getting a job. But I make mistakes with my writing. I do reread and get other people to read my exams before I do them. So you're much more likely to find some ambiguous writing in a homework or in a practice final. Apologies. But I do still make mistakes sometimes. If I make a mistake and there is, more than one reasonable interpretation with what I wrote, I accept all reasonable interpretations. And if there's something ambiguous in the way I wrote it, and we don't notice it in the grading, so you get graded and you lose points, but you're like convinced that it's because of a reasonable interpretation, you come for a regrade. And if you're right, and you will get points back. By the way, just because you think you're right doesn't always mean you're right, but if you're right, you're right. It happens. Folks, okay with this? Yeah, anyway, I'll leave it at that, So Kit's next and then Alice.
So for this sensitivity analysis, oh, sorry. For this sensitivity analysis, there's no written, we don't have to summarize the table, right? We just literally, here's the table, question done, or do we have to give a sentence about you know, how we got that 1.42% or?
Well, sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, so for question E, does it need a written component to the answer too, or can I just put the sensitivity chart? Give me my 4 marks, provided that it's right. Like,
yeah, just literally having the chart is good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the question asks something more, if it required a written response, I mean, like as it's written now, you could just put the chart, get your 4 marks.
Yeah, I mean, like in the version of the problem as written,
yeah,
it's kind of useful to have this part.
Oh yeah, like you need the inputs, right? But I'm saying, like, do you have to be like,
I mean, look, because someone could just literally, do this and then make all these adjustments within here, but then you kind of run a bit of a risk that you made a little mistake and we have difficulties figuring out what you were thinking. And then you get 2 out of 4 points as opposed to potentially like 3 out of 4 points because we see that like you got some of it right and some of it wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I get that. But I mean, like, do you need to be like, as the revenue grows, you know, that,
do you need to write that in English, you mean?
Yeah. Do I need to like do a summary statement, like, you know, as revenue grows, the percentage increases? Yeah. No. Okay.
No, you do not need to do that. If you're like me and only have kindergarten level writing skills, I still think you can do that. I have faith that you can read this table.
Okay.
Okay. So like, yeah, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that because you know what? That is called wasting a little bit of time that you could use getting actual points and proving me actual other things that you know.
Okay.
Like you writing it out does not prove anything else to me except for something that I already kind of have faith in, which is like, you know what this table means.
Okay.
All right, Leah.
Sorry, I was just wondering for cell C38, the like post-acquisition value, why did you divide by 1,000?
Oh yeah, so first of all, okay, so this is important. So C21, right, was our value here. But notice this number was in millions, whereas these numbers are in billions. So 1,204 million is 1.204 billion. In other words, you need to take the millions and divide it by 1,000 to get units of billions. So it's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, because since there weren't the brackets, I wasn't sure if it was like the whole thing divided by 1,000 or just the C21.
No, just C21. Just okay. There's no brackets, i.e., it is just this.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions about this? All right. Well, I ain't doing another 3 hours of this. So we've got a version 2, right? The solution is, I believe, provided. Let me just check to make sure. Problem 2, version 2. The solution is here, right? So, you know, the second version of the problem, I think you guys can kind of go ahead and do on your own time. And hopefully the fact that we really were deliberate in solving version 1 of this problem is helpful. I think what you'll find is that this will feel a lot more tackleable. But I think you'll also see that like being very familiar with this and the flexibility of different ways that I could have asked this problem really makes this problem not that surprising. This problem has one little thing that is unusual, which is I ask you to get weighted average cost of capital by making an adjustment for the cash that the company has. And that's not something we talked about in class. However, I give you the exact formula to use. In other words, this part, the tough part in this problem is part D, and the tough part, I give you the formula. And so you just want to be ready. Like I could give you a formula that's not a formula you got in class, but at the end of the day, I will give it to you. And you just need to have faith that you can use it. You need to not it's really what this is about is testing your ability to not get flustered. Oh, I haven't seen this formula before. I am so scared. My brain stops working. I can't do anything. Like, you do not want to react that way, right? So when you see it, I give it to you, use it. So that's the little challenge bit in this part. And again, just remember, like, if you're like worried, like, oh my God, I might use this formula a little bit wrong, whatever, just go use it. Don't react to the, I might use the formula wrong by not answering the question at all, right? Just use it, because remember, the way we grade is we are looking for reasons to give you points. If you do nothing, there's nothing we can do to help you. If you do something, even if you made some mistakes, we are looking for reasons to give you points. So just remember that. Folks, okay with this? Any questions? So, yes, Harsh.
Just a good question for like this practice exam. So you've done versions as like versions of previous exams all put in one sheet, right? I know.
No, these are not actual questions that I put on previous exams, I don't think.
Okay.
Like, they're just practices that I made, but they're representative. Like, I literally think, if you guys know anyone who's taken my classes before, and you ask them if if my exam came out of left field, I'm actually pretty sure, I would be surprised if any of them say that it came out of left field, unless they literally did not prepare.
Oh, okay. No. Actually, my question is more on like, do we get these versions in the actual exam, or is it just one question in the exam? That's
Oh, no. On the actual exam, there will be only one version of problem one, only one version of, I just did different versions to give you guys more practice.
Understood. Okay.
Because the best practice for the final exam is the practice. It's not the homeworks. So I figured you guys would like more than one example.
Understood. Okay.
It's just to help you build confidence on this. Yes, Alice.
Yeah, so I'm going through the practice exam document. So I understand Q1 is qualitative, 2 is topic 1, 3 is topic 2, and then Q4 we don't have to try to do because it's not tested on this year.
However, Q4 will be replaced with an easy version of a topic 1 or topic 2 question, which is going to be like less than half the time of any one of these 2 questions.
Got it. And then you also put a couple appendix problems. I can see they're mostly like all on topic 2 actually.
Because I think most students are like, man, that's the toughest part. So more practice is helpful or something like that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I was just like, might as well give you guys more because people tend to be scared of that one. Now, some of these problems are going to be dynamic replication instead of static replication. So let's just remember, you only were exposed to static replication in our course. The only very brief thing that we discussed on dynamic replication was, having you guys at least be aware, when does something require dynamic instead of static? So you should be able to identify that. I should be able to say something in words and you'd be able to figure out like, this is not doable with static. And if the answer is it's not doable with static, you can always rubber stamp include the follow-on statement. Thus, it must be done with dynamic. And you don't know how to do it with dynamic from the perspective of our course. So really, like, you should be able to read something and identify, is it doable with static or not? And then if it is doable with static, you should be able to do it with static. Yes, Andrew.
Could you show us an example of like the trigger point?
I did not, but I can actually make one on the fly. You guys want me to do that?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. I'm going to go back to the problem we actually solved. Version 1. I'm going to now convert this into a trigger point problem. Okay, a trigger point problem is what needs to happen to one specific variable for a certain thing to be equal to some specific thing, right? So let's take an example. I could do a trigger point. Let's take an example. Let's say someone, okay, I'm making a problem on the fly right now, right? Let's now change the problem. And now let's say someone is looking to buy Infinity. And let's focus on only buying Infinity equity. And they find out Infinity will only sell its equity as a whole if the company is willing, the buyer is willing to pay $120 billion. Okay. And let's assume that the buyer believes that they can increase the growth rate of revenue for Infinity because of some synergy. Then the question is, how much must it be able to increase the value, the growth rate of revenues in order to justify the purchase? They would need to increase growth rate of revenue at or above some threshold, some trigger point. Does someone want to tell me how to do that? How would I do that in this problem? Jad.
So want to use solver?
Yeah. So by the way, step 1, remember trigger point analysis. You always might as well use solver. So you would say solver. What do you do in solver, Jad?
And you want to set the objective to be the growth rate.
Nope.
Sorry, excuse me. Want to change the changing variable to be the growth rate?
Yes, that's right. Changing variable is going to be the growth rate. Remember, the growth rate was this cell right here. And what's the objective?
You want the equity value to be, what did you say? 120?
So we're going to highlight set objective. And now the objective is set the value of equity equal to a value of, and I had said 120 billion.
There you go.
And then all you push is solve. I guess the new version, my new computer makes a different sound. It makes a pop instead of a ring ring. But now we have our answer, 33.64%, right? So if your synergy bumps up the revenue growth by about 1.64%, then the company's equity is now high enough to justify buying the company for 120 billion. Do folks see that? That's the trigger point analysis. Done.
What do we set the objective to? Sorry.
We set it, so let's go back, right? We set, our objective was what? Set the value of what you're buying equal to the price of what you need to buy it for. Because if the company is worth less than that, you shouldn't buy it. If the company is worth equal or greater than that, you buy. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And that's the trigger point analysis. So just remember, trigger point, like the key here is to understand what you're doing. right? What is your objective? But at the end of the day, right, it'll be pretty transparent what you adjust, because I will say it in plain English. And with a trigger point, you know you're using solver. With a two-way sensitivity analysis, again, the goal will be, it's pretty straightforward to figure out what two variables you're adjusting, because I will say it in plain English. And you know you will use data table. The thing that you'll have to maybe think about a little bit is what is the formula that you put in the corner of your box right here. Right? It can either be the easy version where it's just the straight up valuation, or it's something related to that. Folks, okay with that? Yes, Hugo.
So on the exam, when we run this solver, it changes the values for the growth rate and for the present value of all of the equities. So how would we go about doing that so that you can see like the original numbers?
Wait, Hugo, thanks for saying that, because this actually, everyone should listen to this. We have this number here. This is actually, so I don't remember who had asked, but this one is one where writing in plain English is going to be rather necessary. So everyone pay attention to what I'm going to say, because this is the best way to do it. Because what Hugo is saying is, we just fucked up all our answers. That's what you said, right, Hugo? I mean, you're more tactful about it, but like, yes?
Yes.
Right? And you're right. This is something that if you leave it this way, you've created a bit of an annoyance for us. So here's what you do from this point on. So everyone follow these steps. You go to the answer that you have here, Control C, have a part here called E, trigger point. So I'm just looking at the cell here. C, damn, I can't actually see my row because it's being hidden by another window. C36, so by setting.
C38.
Oh, is it 38? C38 to 120 billion by changing cell F something, right? F17. No, it was cell C36. I was right. Oh shit, F what? It was F17? F17.
So you'd be clear on whether we should change the
Yeah. I mean, just
value term or
let me finish.
Sorry.
Let me finish.
Right.
Just change us back to, oops, just change us back to 32%, so that now your answers are back to the beginning. You see what I'm saying, Hugo?
Yeah, perfect. That makes our life pretty easy.
And by the way, you can pre-write this, and all you'll need to do is change this, this, and this. Like, you can literally have that copy pasted before the exam. You see what I'm saying? To say whatever. I mean, if you want to save yourself a minute here and there, you might as well, right? I mean, look, some people will have time pressure on the exam. So I'm just giving time-saving tips. Any other questions about this?
So, Professor, on the exam, are we going to, would the question from topic 1 be multiples-based valuation?
The what now?
A multiples valuation, like comparables.
Well, we did that. I mean, we did it here, and we did it here.
Yes, I'm saying that on the exam, I don't remember if you said that we're going to have the question from topic 1 will be comparables.
Well, no, you can be guaranteed that the question from topic 1 will have elements of DCF and elements of comparables. It's a guarantee it'll have a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, remember, like, just go with that principle. I said, I will have a little bit of all the most important things in the course. Would you classify comparables as an important part of the course?
Yeah, pretty much.
Consider DCF to be an important part of the course?
Pretty much as well, yeah.
Yeah, so they're both going to be in there.
Okay.
It's like there should be no uncertainty there.
Sounds good.
Now, let's say I did a version. Let's talk through it, right? Because like there's a bunch of different ways this can play out, right? So for instance, like it could be that like the topic 1 so challenging question will only have DCF, no multiple. Well, then you can rest assured that that means the easy question will be a topic 1 question, and it'll probably be an easy multiples based valuation. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that's kind, there are different ways for the cookie to crumble, but the cookie will crumble. Maybe I don't even know what people mean when they say I'm hungry right now. What a cookie. I don't think I have any cookies, but I do have chocolate. Any other questions? So it's at 9:11 right now, 9:11 p.m. This is not symbolic of anything. Hopefully you guys feel less emergency-ish after today's session with regards to topic 1 than maybe you did before. And hopefully you feel like this is like a way easier question than any of the stuff that you did in the homework. The goal of this question is to mainly test, are you comfortable with the basic elements of the quantitative stuff? And do you have a good high level understanding qualitatively of the most important things in evaluation? What this question will not really test is how well suited are you to make a bunch of judgment calls and to do all the like nuanced stuff that you must do in the real world. Why? Because that latter part, it's simply impossible for me to test on that in a 3-hour exam without being wildly unfair to you. But because that part is important in the real world, that's why I made it the central focus of the homework. So hopefully this all feels like it makes it makes sense to me, at least. At the end of the day, I view my mandate to prepare you for the real world until this week where I'm preparing you just for the exam. Yes, Sharon.
Yes. So are you going to post solutions for the qualitative questions?
Yeah, maybe someone wants to remind me on like Friday to do it. But if someone reminds me on Friday, I'll find time on Friday or Saturday to do it. Sound good?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I won't have the time tonight. I won't have the time tomorrow because I'm fully booked and I teach all day on Thursday. So literally the only day that I can start doing it is Friday. So someone needs to email me then or else I will forget.
All right. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. I see another hand up. So Marie-Dominique.
Yes, I was wondering if you would have your office hours tomorrow or not.
Yes, but tomorrow's office hours are Zoom only because I'll be working from home. And Thursday, I will do the in-class lectures for the last part where I'm going to do, yet another static replication problem for you guys and talk through again, like, all the thought process and like the different bells and whistles that could be done there, kind of a little bit like I did today. Sound good?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Any other final question? Oh, I see some stuff in chat. So let me see what it says here. In person. What's going on here? maybe I missed Thursday. Oh yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, Camilla, if you are still here, the Thursday session will be in person. Again, like it's practical reason for it, which is I think anyone who's probably seen the YouTube video and seen the in-class sessions for static will probably agree. I think it works better because static replication, like inevitably you'll be using pen and paper style for stuff. It just works a hell of a lot better in person than it does over Zoom. Again, like imagine if I was drawing a payoff diagram here. Like this would not be that helpful for you, I don't think. Any other final questions? Or are we good? All right. I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys feel a little bit more comfortable with what to anticipate for topic 1. I hope you guys, feel like the standard that I'm going to set in terms of what's testable on that question is somewhat reasonable. Because I can certainly see how if you were preparing or we were thinking of preparing for the final exam, using homework 1 as the standard for what to prepare for, that it would be scary. Literally, if I wrote the problem myself and then tried to give myself an hour and a half to do it, I wouldn't be able to do it after having written the question. So if that statement applies to me, I can only imagine what, someone who hasn't done it as long and who didn't write the question, so that never made sense, right? So like, hopefully now you're anchored on the right thing. You feel a little bit more confident there. All right. So, but, you still want to come in with a plan, of how you're going to approach things. Templates may or may not be helpful for you. Good luck preparing. All right. So I will see you guys on Thursday in person. For some of you, one last time. For some of you, it may be the first and last time. Interesting, but it's all good. So we shall see each other again. Again, I wish you guys all the best. And again, don't be too afraid. Like the way we're approaching this is we're looking for all the good things that you do, right? So it's not something where like it's devastating to you if you make a little mistake. It won't be. Okay, so don't put so much pressure on yourself every step of the way. Doing that will only make you less productive, will make you more likely to be like a deer caught in the headlights. And that's what, that's the thing that leads to a disaster scenario. So you want to avoid that by staying a little bit calm. And, if you think you're making a mistake, just move on, just keep on doing it. All right, done is better than perfect. That's Samir said that yesterday. That is true. It is true in the real world. It is even true in the ACF exam. All right. So I hope everyone has a nice evening. And again, we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thanks, Professor. Have a good one.
Thank you.
You too. And I'll try to post this by tomorrow lunch.
Thank you.